What is on your mind that you want to talk about and get advice on? Secret conversations with a teenager. My husband has been chatting to a girl for months behind my back. We are around 40 and she is a teenager. I really don't know how to make sense of this situation, and thought it might be a good idea to ask for advice here before I do something stupid. My husband and I have been happily married for over 10 years. In that time he's never done anything to make me suspect he was not being faithful to me. He really is a wonderful man and I consider myself extremely lucky to have found him, which is why the current situation confuses me so much. A couple of days ago he forgot his phone in my handbag after we went shopping. I went to have lunch with a friend afterwards, and wanted to use his phone to call home, and tell him I still have his phone. But when I unlocked his phone I noticed he had Facebook Messenger installed on his phone. My husband is not the social media type, so I was curious, and opened the app, and my heart sank. There were lots of messages from a woman. I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. She is his only friend. He used a fake name, and from the chat log it appears as though they chatted somewhere else before she convinced him to create a Facebook account. I spent the next couple of hours reading through the entire chat history. Turns out for months he's been talking to a teenage girl who lives in Georgia. We're in Vermont. The reason I'm so confused about what to do is because nothing sexual appears to be happening. They texted about all sorts of things, and the times she tried to steer the conversation in a sexual direction, he shut it down pretty quickly, and changed the topic. He also wasn't trying to hide the fact that he's married. On the contrary, some of the things he told her about me was actually very sweet. Having read their entire chat history, I'm fairly sure this girl is smitten with my husband, although nothing overtly inappropriate appears to be happening between them. What bothers me so much about this is the fact that we're normally very open with one another, and he's never once mentioned this to me. I really want to confront him over this, even if it is just to find out what's going on. But I did invade his privacy by reading his messages without his permission, and I'm scared it's going to damage our relationship if he finds out I did this. I really don't know what to do here. Just to clarify, the messages she sent him weren't eliciting sex. For example, at one stage they spoke about relationships, and she mentioned her ex-boyfriend tried to pressure her into it. He told her any guy that respected her would not pressure her into it, and then changed the topic. However, from the way that she constantly tries to flatter and compliment him, it feels like she's very much into him. I obviously don't have the chat log with me, so I can't recall verbatim everything they said, since there were literally thousands of messages, but nothing jumped out to me as being inappropriate. They spoke about everything from school to politics and art. He is just being himself. I don't remember him mentioning his age, however, so I don't know if she knows how old he really is. They appear to be speaking on a regular basis, every second day or so, and mostly when I'm not around. I've decided I need to talk to him about this. It's eating me up inside and I won't be able to let it go. I'm already literally losing sleep over it. I'm going to try my best to muster up the courage to speak to him about this. I'm just so scared that my entire world is about to come crashing down. I really love him to death, but this is a side of him I've never seen before. Should I reach out to the man responsible for my brother's death? I am a female in my early 40s. He is 70-ish, and my brother was 8. TLDR. My older brother was killed in a horrible car accident when I was a kid. I've always wanted to talk to the man who was driving the truck that hit us, and I've found his contact information in the phone book. Would it be wrong for me to reach out to him? My older brother Aiden was killed in a car accident when I was 5 years old. Aiden was 8 years old. My mother, 2 brothers, and I were in our car in a left turn lane. A dump truck driver, Mitch, ran a red light and hit us. Aiden was killed instantly. My younger brother and mother were critically injured, but survived. I had minor physical injuries, but was mentally scarred from the experience, and seeing Aiden laying dead on the side of the road. Mitch was the one who pulled me from our car, and I remember how freaked out he was. Mitch did not have a driver's license because it had been revoked from too many DUIs. He was not drunk when he was driving that day. He was driving a dump truck for a landscaping company, and the dump truck was found to be faulty on many levels. He had run the red light because the brakes did not work. In any case, my parents sued and won a financial settlement. Mitch served about 2 weeks in the workhouse, but that was the extent of his punishment. The accident was in the mid-1980s. Throughout my adulthood, I've kind of wanted to talk to Mitch. I'm not even sure what I want from him, just to talk about what happened since I was so young, and I thought talking to him would help provide some closure. I wouldn't mind an apology, but would not necessarily expect that. Thanks to the magic of the internet, I found his contact information online in the phone book. I've been thinking about reaching out for the past couple of months, thinking that sending a letter would be best. Do you think it would be wrong for me to reach out to him? Also, I have been through therapy about the accident, and about other traumas. I never addressed Mitch specifically, except for what my mother coached me to talk about regarding him. I'm not currently in therapy, but since I've been having old memories and feelings popping up recently, I should get back in therapy when I can get health insurance. Would we be unreasonable for eloping when the wedding is this weekend? My girlfriend and I had planned to get married on Saturday. We wrapped up all our planning around Halloween. All that was left was to ring some time this week, and make sure everything was running smoothly. She called the venue, and the person she spoke to asked her to confirm some changes she'd apparently made. My girlfriend had no clue what he was talking about, and he reminded her of all the changes that had been put in recently. We had not approved any of these changes. We were able to get some of it put back the way it was, but there are some things that we couldn't change back at such short notice. The venue forwarded us the emails asking for the changes so we could look over them. Our communication was being done via an email account we created solely for wedding stuff, and the email address which asked for the changes is the exact same address, except 2 letters are switched round. The venue is very apologetic for not calling us directly, but can only fix so much of it at this stage. We think we know what happened. The whole time we were planning the wedding we got pushback from both sets of parents, and the stuff they had the biggest issues with have all been changed. I'm willing to bet that all of this was related to at least one of our respective parents. We don't know anyone who would want to F with us or the wedding this badly except our parents, who got pissy when we told them they couldn't financially contribute to the wedding because they were trying to trade their money for whatever wedding stuff they wanted. Right now the stuff that we wanted that is still in this wedding is my suit, the venue, and the DJ. My girlfriend has gone to pick up her dress, and she's not heard from the shop, so we're assuming that hasn't changed. I'm calling round everyone, and it looks like the menu has been changed, as has the guest list, and the cake. We paid for the wedding we'd planned, and it looks like any additional costs from the changes, such as the extra people, were paid for by someone else, but they wouldn't give me any of the card info for legal reasons. We probably won't be speaking to our parents again after this, unless one of them owns up, in which case we'll just stop speaking to that one. But this feels like a joint effort as it's dealt with both sets of parents' complaints. Before my girlfriend left to get the dress, she requested I get advice, as we are seriously considering eloping. We have the marriage certificate here, the honeymoon is unaltered, and exactly what we wanted, and there's a few appointments we could make between now and Saturday at the town hall to get the certificate legally signed/filed. However, we now have around 200 people attending this wedding in 3 days. Our original guest list was about 100 including families, and plus ones. People have booked hotels, planes, trains, and are coming from other countries to be here. None of these people have done anything to us, and would be getting caught in the crossfire if we were to elope instead. Would we be the assholes? Update. I posted in the group chat I have with all 4 parents that someone has been screwing with the wedding. We found the email they used, and we'd be tracking the IP address to a device and location. This was all absolute bullcrap. We don't even know how to find an IP address. As soon as I said we'd be tracking the email, they all started pointing fingers and accusing each other. It looks like all 4 of them were in on it together. Still not sure what we're doing about the wedding, but all 4 parents are uninvited. We're thinking that we might elope for the ceremony, and then have the reception as planned. It's all the same party/venue, and we won't get money back, because of the number of people who are coming from all over the place. Update. My mother made up the email, and her mother helped replan the wedding. We knew they had been meeting for lunch, but we didn't realize what they were doing in that time. Caterer and baker can fix the menu and cake, and the clothing is all safe. Venue think they might be able to fix the decorations, and the parents have paid for the changes. The ceremony itself is the same. We were worried it had been changed from a non-religious ceremony to a religious one, but it hadn't, so we'll probably just go through with the day as it currently stands, with a couple changes. We've decided that we will meet up before the ceremony with some close friends, no parents, to sign the certificate so we're not doing it surrounded by strangers, then have the ceremony, and rings as planned with everyone invited, go to the reception with everyone who has been invited because innocent people have paid out money to be here, and then afterwards we will go for drinks with the people who were at the signing earlier in the day. The venue offered us security, but we're not going to uninvite the additional people or turn them away, and as for our parents, we're not sure. The options are either invite them, and let them deal with their invitees so we don't have to, then cut them out of speeches, and just don't acknowledge them all day, and after the reception cut contact, or just don't let them come, in which case we will need the security the venue offered because I can't see them just not going. Venue have also said to pretty much just leave it with them. They'll put what they can back to what we'd planned, and they're prepared to offer a partial refund based on what they can't fix, so if they fix 50% of it, They're prepared to refund 25% for the 50% they can't fix. Update, the final one. We had a small private thing where we signed the certificate with our closest friends, then we went to the planned ceremony, and had a short service where we exchanged rings, followed by a reception. We told the parents that they were not invited, told the venue they weren't invited, the venue put what was essentially a bouncer at the door, and they still got in. They don't seem to understand what they did wrong as they boasted to their guests that they planned this, but we changed it to what you're currently seeing, and their own guests ended up being the ones to tell them how screwed up that was. They were pretty much shamed by their guests into leaving about an hour after they arrived. Also, half their guests didn't show. It was probably about 60 to 70% our guests in the end, and we definitely had the majority. Food, including cake, was sorted out, but not decor, and venue are refunding us 50%, which was going to be 30%, but then they let the parents in. We only spoke to them once to tell them that because after completely freaking up our wedding plans, they then couldn't honor one simple request to not come, they would not be hearing from us, potentially ever again. And if they contacted us, that would change to definitely never hearing from us again. We are currently in the cab on our way to get drinks with the same friends who were at the signing earlier, and then off on our honeymoon. Mother-in-law feeds deer with my stuffing bread. We invited mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife's sister-in-law for Thanksgiving. Last night I ripped apart a couple of loaves of bread, and left them on a bowl on the counter so they would get stale overnight, so I could make the stuffing. I came downstairs this morning to find mother-in-law and sister-in-law in the kitchen drinking coffee, so I made myself a cup and decided to commence cooking. However, my bread was gone, every last crumb. Turns out mother-in-law was so entranced by the deer in our yard, and thought well they looked hungry, so she took the bowl and sprinkled the contents around the yard. But why did you do that? I asked. Now I can't make my stuffing. 7-Eleven is open, they sell bread. Okay, I said, I'll need 2 loaves. She responds, you want me to go? I say, well, you're the one who fed it all to the deer, at which point she started to cry, and ran into the guest room, and didn't emerge until 2 hours later with red eyes, and a woe is me attitude. And her sons and husband are walking on eggshells around her, and being solicitous toward poor little mother-in-law. Manipulative bitch. Update. When I last posted, mother-in-law had just emerged from hiding, and brother-in-law, father-in-law, and husband were kissing her ass. Sister-in-law and I were pretty repulsed by their attention being paid to Joe Casta, so we just went into the kitchen, opened a bottle of wine far from the maddening crowd, and started cooking dinner. An hour later, husband comes into the room, and finally asks me what happened. I told him, and, of course, he said that she didn't mean to give our stuffing away, and why am I making such a big deal out of it? I let him know that I had set the stuffing bread out overnight so that it would have the crispy crust we love. Here's the rest of the conversation best as I can remember it. Dear husband, couldn't you just go out and get more bread? Me, I'm not the one who gave away the stuffing bread, plus I have an entire meal to cook. Dear husband, well, you didn't mean to be so nasty to mom about it. Me, I wasn't nasty at all. I just told her what kind of bread to get at the store. Dear husband, you know she's not familiar with the area. Note, dear husband has been stationed here for 5 years, and his parents visit several times a year. It's not a hard place to find your way around. You really hurt her feelings. Me, I didn't mean to hurt her feelings, I just needed the bread. Dear husband, did you go out and get it? Me, no, I have been busy. That's why I asked her. Dear husband, fine. I'll go out and get it. What a guy, right? He leaves, and 45 minutes later returns with a Food Lion bag. He couldn't remember what kind of bread I asked for. Italian bread. Is it that hard to remember? So he bought 3 boxes of stovetop stuffing. Now, I love me some stovetop, but not at Thanksgiving. But that's exactly what we ate. Instant stuffing. Looks like that vile woman won this round. Note, dear husband is awesome except when he's around his mother. It's always been a little weird, but this was definitely the most ridiculous episode. I don't understand how this man is smart enough to run a nuclear reactor, but turns into a 180-pound glob of jello when it comes to her. Another note, he will not be getting any for a while. Am I the unreasonable one for making a complaint against a nursery worker due to how she reacted to my wife picking our kid up? My wife and I have 2 kids, a daughter, and a son. My wife is an essential worker as she's a doctor. She works extremely long hours with hardly any days off, whilst I work a typical 9-to-5 job, so I've always taken care of arranging the kids for school, and care etc. Well, with lockdown, I've been able to homeschool my daughter, but since my wife is an essential worker, My son's nursery has still been able to take him, and so I have dropped him off there as normal as, even though I'm homeschooling my other kid, I'm fitting that around me working from home. It makes it easier for my son to still have his routine, and so I can do my work, and so on. Anyway, I was going to pick him up like normal, but my wife chose to do it as she was off at that time, and could actually get him. The people at this nursery know my wife, as do the parents, even though she's rarely there. She was actually happy to be able to pick our son up from the nursery for once, and I thought it went fine until she came home in tears. She told me this nursery worker who has just started there didn't believe that my wife was our son's mother, as this worker had only ever seen me. The other workers, and my son told her that my wife was in fact the mother, and that she wasn't a danger to my son. The new worker still didn't believe it, and said that she didn't feel comfortable with letting a 3-year-old go off with a random woman she'd never seen before. My wife got really upset, and it didn't then upset my son, as everybody was practically saying there was no danger as my wife was a mother. A few other parents got dragged into this, and backed up the other staff, and it was only through relenting that the new worker gave up. But she made a really angry comment along the lines of, "Maybe if you were here more often, I wouldn't have to verify your identity." My wife wants to forget it happened, but I am very angry. So the next day I picked up my son, and asked to speak to the woman in charge about the new worker. She wasn't there when it happened, but I complained, and said that how my wife was treated was ridiculous, and that the coworker was out of line for her snide comment at the end. The woman wasn't happy, and I've now learnt the new worker has been given a severe warning, and that her behavior is being watched. The parents who backed my wife up are torn. Some think I did the right thing as the woman didn't act professional, whilst others think I'm unreasonable for interfering. My wife is annoyed as she thinks I shouldn't have said anything. I really don't know if what I did was right or wrong, so am I the unreasonable one? My mother left the gas oven open while I was asleep, and went out. My mother cooked something on the gas oven, and left it there for hours, then went out, completely forgot about it. She locked the front door and I was asleep in my bedroom. I suddenly woke up, and found a lot of smoke everywhere in the house. The kitchen is at the back of the house, so I had to go past a lot of smoke in the air without seeing anything to reach the kitchen. But I didn't do that. I didn't know where the smoke came from, so I ran out of the house to the front door, and yelled for help. My mother was joining a wedding party next door. When she heard me, she immediately ran into our kitchen to turn the gas off. Then, she turned at me, and started to yell, "Why the hell didn't you go in and turn it off? Are you freaking stupid or what?" I was shocked. I could have died if I didn't wake up in time, and now everything is my fault. She even cried, and had my dad comfort her, and blame everything on me. I was 12 back then, but the event haunted me until now. I don't know. I need some clarification for the relationship with my mom. Does she really love me? She always told me how much she wasted her life for me, and made me think that she was always right because she is my mom. She told me she loves me and I'm the one who doesn't respect my parents, and bad luck gonna come to me because of it. Mother-in-law thinks because I'm pregnant that I shouldn't be wearing bikinis because the sight of my belly is for my husband's eyes only. We are in Hawaii for vacation, dear husband, mother-in-law, and I. This is not our first vacay together. We have gone on quite a few, and have had a wonderful time on each, and every one with no hiccups. We went to the pool because I wanted to swim, and get some exercise before breakfast. Not that it matters, but we are in her vacation home, which is kind of private, that does overlook the beach. But I'm not ashamed of my body. I'm in great shape in my second trimester. I go out to get into the pool, and my mother-in-law has a conniption saying it is indecent for a woman to be showing her belly in my condition. Myself and my husband laugh it off. Mother-in-law does not, and has a scowl on her face. When we are being served out breakfast, my husband comes from money, so his family has a small staff that takes care of the house, and a housekeeper, and chef when we visit. When the waiter comes, she tries to cover me with a towel. I push it off, and say I'm fine. She looks at me with such disgust. She says in her time that women covered themselves during pregnancy. I told her, well, this is my time, and we show off our Buddha bellies with pride. My husband jumps in, and says, Mom, we have always had great vacays, the three of us. Let's not ruin it because you feel everyone should dress how you feel. Me thinking that's the end of that because she says nothing more. That night she comes to me with a one-piece bathing suit, and says I can wear this for the rest of the vacation. This pisses me off, and I quickly let her know I will wear exactly what I bought, and if she doesn't like it, tough titty. I told her that this vacay was a Christmas present from my husband to me and I will wear what I want. She says that a bikini on a pregnant woman is indecent. I said we are not of those religions where you must cover yourself up, so I don't need to. I showed my husband what she gave me, and he went to speak to her, and she just kept saying that my showing my belly is disgusting because pregnant. I refuse to cover myself like I'm doing something shameful for having a baby. My husband agrees with me. He says I look beautiful and sexy, and that's how I'm feeling in this moment. I'm not gonna let her take that from me because like all women I have times when I don't feel like that. I called my best friend, says maybe I should concede to keep the peace. I said no because I didn't disrupt the peace, she did. She told me I couldn't feed my baby. Mother-in-law and I got along just fine until the birth of my son. Then she overstepped, by far. Months before I was going to give birth, she and her entire family were wanting to know when they should buy plane tickets so they could all come to be with us when my son arrived. They all wanted to be in the hospital when I had the baby, and see me right after, and hold my son, and stay at our house, and help. My husband didn't understand why I had a problem with this at the time, and said it was part of his culture to do this. Well, praise God I had my son 2 weeks early, so none of my in-laws invaded my space at the hospital and I could spend my birthing and recovery experience with just my baby and my husband. Only my mom came to help us for 2 weeks before mother-in-law arrived, and stayed for 2 months. She bought a one-way ticket, and then just didn't leave for a very long time. There were, of course, the small things. She somehow made it through medical school, and is a practicing MD. But many things happened that made me lose respect for her as a doctor, which I can go into at another time because there is just so much. She grew up with maids, and never had to cook or clean. She doesn't know how, so her helping was not helping. She just came because she wanted to size me up as a mother, and make sure I wasn't going to hurt her first grandbaby. My husband went to work every day, so it was just me, and her, and my son alone at home for 2 months. I felt constantly observed, and quietly judged. I couldn't get away from her. The big issue was with me feeding my son. What enraged me more than anything was her little comments about my breastfeeding. How much milk did he drink? Maybe his baby acne is because you're sweating on his face when you're breastfeeding? Didn't you just feed him? Oh wow, he's hungry again already? He sure eats a lot. How much milk does he drink a day? You should feed him less often. He has gas. She was convinced that I was overfeeding him, and stuffing milk down his throat. Whenever my baby was fussy or had hiccups or was colicky, she would make a little comment about how it was from my breastfeeding. Her babies were raised on formula. I just fed my baby as much as he wanted, and as often as he wanted day and night, and I had terrific supply, and didn't feel the need to count ounces because breastfeeding worked great for both of us, and my baby was chubby and healthy. However, she thought he was too chubby and I was overfeeding him. From my understanding, for newborns, all the books and doctors will tell you to wake baby after 2 to 3 hours to feed. Mother-in-law disagreed with this. She would purposefully hold my baby, and shush, and rock him to sleep, and keep him asleep for as long as possible in her arms, and make me feel guilty if I asked for my baby. She would get so upset when I took him from her to feed him after 2 hours. One day, this escalated, and she threw a little hissy fit. She held my baby, who kept waking up and fussing because he was hungry, and it had been 2 hours, then 3, and then 4 hours of him waking, fussing, and then her rocking him back to sleep, and shushing him. I knew he was hungry and I had so much milk. I walked up to her, and said, I'll take him now, I think he's hungry. She looks at me angrily, and defensively as if she's guarding my son from harm, and says no, he's fine. I say give me my son, he's hungry. She says again no, he's fine, and turns away from me. I'm getting angry. Give him to me, I want to feed my son, it's been 4 hours. She responds, silence. Silly woman, he is tired and sleeping, so just leave him alone, he's fine. If he sleeps all day, and doesn't eat, he's going to be awake all night, and hungry. Give me my son, I say forcefully. I take him from her, and she doesn't say a word. She just makes a pouty hurt face, and goes up to her third-floor guest room. I don't see her until my husband comes home. I tell my husband what his mom did, and said no one tells me when, and how much I can feed my son. She didn't cross me again like that, but she silently watched, and judged every single time I breastfed him in front of her. My son is almost 1 now. The breastfeeding is still going strong and I have a perfectly healthy and happy little boy in every way. This incident with mother-in-law is something I have never been able to get over though, and I don't think I ever will. I can never forget how she tried to hold him hostage from me, and prevent me from feeding him when he was hungry. My mother-in-law called me fat. I'm 5 months pregnant and at a healthy weight according to my doc. She literally took food out of my hands and threw it in the trash. I was so stunned I didn't know what to say. Now we've decided to avoid family Christmas and have a private holiday to avoid the condescension. Bad move or no? My mother just confirmed that she intentionally broke up me and my ex-boyfriend and I were together for just over 3 years. We broke up because our parents, my mother, his father, got engaged. They pulled a lot of crap, but I'm going to try and condense it. They spent months referring to us as siblings, and introducing us to people as our children, and constantly joking about us as though we were full-blood relatives when there's not even a distant relation. When they got engaged, there came even more comments about how we were going to be a regular nuclear family, with a married couple, and their children, and Mom telling me I should think of my ex and his sister as my siblings. A bit before the breakup, I had a pregnancy scare. I told my mom, who said it was good I wasn't pregnant because how will you explain to the grandbabies that you have the same parents? They got engaged, and had an engagement party where my ex wasn't in attendance, but I was. At the party my mother gave a speech, and said thanks to our children, X, and OP, for helping create this wonderful little family unit of ours. Aside from your incest, I then had to deal with that for the rest of the party, and X and I wound up breaking up within a week because now our entire extended family, and family friends were joking about it. The wedding was on Valentine's Day. We hadn't spoken since the breakup, but X contacted me, and asked how I wanted to handle it, and we agreed either we both go or neither of us go. We both flip-flopped back and forth on if we were going or not, but ultimately agreed to go because it would look worse if we didn't go at all, and we were both asked to be in the wedding party. It went about the same as any other wedding would go, right up until the DJ said that our parents wanted to dedicate a song to their children, and then he played Sweet Home Alabama. Cue laughter. Me and X left after that, but my mom followed. She said it was just a joke, we didn't need to get all huffy about it, and begged us to come back inside. We refused, and stood outside while we waited for the next bus. Then we got to talking, and long story short, we agreed to pick up where we left off, as we had been apart a few months, but all the feelings were still there. We'd not had any other relationships in this time, and he even still had stuff at my place. We agreed that it was stupid of us to let other people dictate our relationship, and also agreed to severely limit contact with our parents this time around. Not full no contact, but very low contact. We've also booked some sessions with a couples counselor starting Sunday. Today my mom asked me to meet her for coffee, and I went, thinking that this would be a perfect time to tell her we're back together, talk about boundaries, and initiate the very low contact my boyfriend and I had agreed on. However, I ran through the rain to get there, and didn't think to touch up the concealer I'd put on the hickey my boyfriend left on my neck last night. Mom immediately sees it, and asks where it's from. I was about 2 seconds away from George glassing her, but then she says it's from your brother, isn't it? I then snap he's not my brother. She now knows everything she needs to know, and basically says that she's been married less than a week and I'm already trying to ruin it. I got a bit upset, and responded that she essentially ruined my relationship of 3 years in favor of her relationship of less than 18 months, and we've only just started rebuilding what they ruined. She then says clearly we didn't do a good enough job if you're already mending it. I directly asked if she was trying to break us up. She admitted that she and my new stepdad had entered into their relationship with the sole intention of ending ours because we said once, in passing, that we had been looking at houses a bit under an hour away so we could have a garden for future kids, and they didn't want to have to drive a 2-hour round trip to see us. When they realized they actually liked each other / wanted to get married, they then became even more committed to ending our relationship because they'd rather we were heartbroken than let their friends and family think that they were odd. So this whole thing started as a way to make sure we didn't move an hour away from them, and now it's them trying to make sure their friends and family don't think they're weird. My mom left an hour ago. My boyfriend is at work right now, phone off, totally oblivious. I am still at the coffee place writing this in a state of shock. What do I do with this information? I know I need to tell my boyfriend when he gets off work, but how do we approach either parent going forward, or begin to deal with this whole thing? Mother-in-law tricked my vegetarian daughter into eating meat, and made her cry. Am I overreacting by not wanting to allow my mother-in-law to feed my children anymore after this crap that she pulled? My 9-year-old daughter became a vegetarian about 8 months ago. Her friend's older sister's influence, and takes it surprisingly seriously, given her age. For some bizarre reason, my mother-in-law has a serious bug up her ass about it, and hates that my husband and I allow it. We had a small confrontation about it a few months ago, but she seemed to back off after I made it clear I wasn't interested in her input. On Friday night we had dinner with my husband's parents, and she served spaghetti. It was a meat sauce for the rest of us, but when she gave my daughter her bowl, she said, "And a special veggie sauce just for you all," sweetly. Halfway through her bowl, daughter started to panic, and asked mother-in-law if she was sure there was no meat in the sauce. Mother-in-law insisted there was none. I took her plate to inspect, and sure enough, there was beef in her sauce. When I stated there was indeed meat in it, my daughter immediately began to cry. I took her into the living room to calm her down while husband confronted his mom. She at first insisted it was an accident, but after he established he didn't buy that for a second, She admitted it was intentional. She said she thought by reminding her how delicious meat was, she would give up that vegetarian nonsense. She said she couldn't see what the big deal was, and suggested we get daughter therapy because the fact she cried over it was very troubling, and a sign something is wrong with her. At that point I insisted we leave. I was starting to seriously consider throwing the spaghetti in the swine's face, but knew it would traumatize the kids. In the car, we obviously explained to daughter that there was nothing wrong with her, and grandma was 100% in the wrong. She seemed to have already come to that conclusion on her own, though. Mother-in-law sent a half-assed text apology to my husband last night. Basically I shouldn't have done that, but, insert essay about why eating meat is no big deal, and daughter overreacted here. He hasn't responded because we're still trying to figure out what to say, and how to handle the situation. I'm beyond livid. He's trying to figure out things to say to get her to understand daughter's feelings, like asking her how she would feel if someone tricked her into eating a dog. However, I strongly feel like we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to defend our daughter's personal choice not to eat meat, and her right to have that respected. We shouldn't have to try to validate her feelings of being deeply upset after she was tricked into doing something she is strongly morally opposed to by someone she trusted. I told my husband I don't trust his mother to feed my kids anymore. He thinks I'm overreacting, and we should give her a second chance once the dust settles with this, but my trust is gone. She took it upon herself to decide my daughter was wrong for being a vegetarian, and try to fix her. She decided she knows best, and to ignore not only my daughter's boundaries, but ours as her parents not to push meat on her. It also worries me because our 5-year-old has a peanut allergy that she scoffs at. She's never tried to sneak her peanut products, but she's dismissed it as probably not serious, and has said how people outgrow allergies, so she probably will too. After this incident with the meat, I'm terrified she'll decide to ignore that food restriction too. What do you guys think? Am I overreacting for feeling like she shouldn't be given a second chance when it comes to feeding my kids after this? Mill attempted to have my daughter call my brother-in-law daddy. My Mill is a lunatic who believes I should have ended up with my brother-in-law. Rundown. Brother-in-law and I were friends in high school. Brother-in-law got a crush on me. I didn't reciprocate. He took it badly. In college, I started dating his older brother who also attended that college. I feel some blame can fall on me here because I knew how brother-in-law felt and I ended up with his older brother, but that's just how it goes at times. I didn't intend for it to happen. Brother-in-law told Mill a very different story than what the truth was. Outings with me and my group of friends in high school were one-on-one dates according to brother-in-law. We were highly sexual, according to brother-in-law. Basically, he told her we were the one true pairing of the world, and we'd be together forever. It didn't work out that way. Mill accused me of a lot of things when I started dating my now husband, and eventually had to step back because of how many people backed my version of events up. Shockingly, the truth has witnesses. Years passed. Brother-in-law has always made me, and dear husband feel uncomfortable, and so we don't see him that much. We see Mill twice a month at most, so she has supervised playtime with the kids. She even once asked dear husband if he'd be open to sharing me with brother-in-law at one point. It was a rough few years. Last visit with Mill ends up coinciding with brother-in-law being there. We push on with formalities, and dear husband steps out for a smoke, leaving me to supervise dear son and dear daughter while Mill plays with them on the floor. Dear son is old enough to call brother-in-law uncle brother-in-law. Dear daughter is still going through her first words. I get up for a few moments to leave the teacups in the kitchen and I get back to see her holding dear daughter up to brother-in-law, and saying, "Say hi to daddy. Say hi to daddy." He was playing along, and making faces at her. The only reaction I had was to grab the kids, and leave while they protested. I explained why we were rushing out to dear husband in the car, and he was really upset. He called Mill to find out what the hell she was up to, and she just got very defensive about me not hearing correctly. Dear husband lied, and said he'd heard it as well, and she stuttered that she was just letting the children know the truth. Their daddy was brother-in-law. Dear husband was being stupid by not realizing I was cheating on him, and being taken in by my charms so I could bag both brothers. We're putting them both on a timeout, and Mill is not happy that her twice-monthly grandma visits are cancelled for the next 4 months. I see nicknames are a thing here. I feel I'll be posting a bit about this lunatic and I'm not very imaginative, so if anyone wants to give her one, I'm all ears. Edit. Thank you all for the advice. I need to take a step back, and reevaluate things, and speak to my husband. I welcome all further advice on the matter, but I do really need to gather my thoughts, and assess the situation. Mother-in-law thinks she has a right to name our child. My mother-in-law got off the phone a little while ago with my fiancé soon-to-be dear husband. In 2 weeks, mother-in-law was trying to convince dear future husband to name our Lo Elizabeth after her mother, which I hate, and so does he. He gently let her down because he says the more firm you are with her, the combative she becomes. I've only met them a handful of times. They live in Arizona, we are in NYC, so she called me. But I'm already pissed at my own mother and I'm 22 weeks, and am in no condition to bullcrap people. She said, "You know it would mean so much to me if you were to name my grandchild Elizabeth." I said, "Didn't dear future husband just tell you no? Isn't that what he said?" She tried to interrupt. I cut her off. "Did you think if you called me with your sickly sweet voice that I would somehow cave? Because I can assure you all you're doing is pissing me off, and tap dancing on my last nerve." She said, "Well, I feel I should have some sort of say in my grandchild's naming." Side note: this woman has bullied her other daughter-in-law into naming their children names she has picked out. Wrong swine, wrong time, wrong day. I said, "Your feelings are irrelevant, you are not the parent." She said, "I'm the grandmother." I said, "Yes, the parent of be one of the parents, grand once removed. Know your role. You can visit, dote on, spend time with our child as we as her parents deem acceptable. But please do not think your job is to raise our daughter. It is not. So no, you do not get a say in what we name her, is strictly between me and her dad." I continued, "Is there anything else you want to say?" She's silent. I will take that as a no, and just say good night, and then I hung up. I know I might have been harsh, but with all I'm going through I just don't have the patience. My dear future husband is on the phone with her telling her she should not have upset me considering my condition. He's beyond pissed. But honestly, I'm fine. I said what I meant and I truly meant what I said. Also, we have decided on a name. It's Rose Waverly. Update: we have been back to the drawing board for a couple of weeks. Mother-in-law reported dear husband missing because we went on vacation. Yesterday dear husband, me, and our 2 kids got back from a family vacation. This vacation was planned. Mother-in-law knew we were going. We found out this morning that she reported dear husband missing on day 2 of our 2-week vacation. We think it's because we didn't reply to her messages the second she sent them, then she decided to take drastic measures. We are not in full contact with mother-in-law. She's been upping her crazy in the last few years, especially since we got married. So we're probably somewhere between medium and low contact. She's also on a pretty strict info diet. We pretty much only tell her things when it's too late for her to F them up, or when we have no choice because other family members, or our kids, which has happened a few times, have let slip info that they didn't realize we were keeping from her. We've talked to the police this morning, and that we wanted noted wherever possible that she filed a false report. They've said they can't do more than that because technically they found dear husband because he was missing for over 10 days. But he was on a planned vacation. That everyone who they asked told them that. What the actual F? I just don't know what to do anymore. She bought my daughter a freaking puppy. Previously, my mother-in-law tricked my daughter into eating meat a few days ago. Dear husband texted her yesterday to let her know dear daughter wants me to take her trick-or-treating instead of mother-in-law like we initially planned. I guess this got it through to mother-in-law what a massive betrayal it was, and she actually felt genuine remorse. She said she was going to talk to dear daughter and apologize. We were very relieved because we worried it would be like pulling teeth to get her to see that what she did was awful. My daughter just got home from school screaming, "Grandma got me a puppy." Turns out that my mother-in-law went to a pet store and bought a Pomeranian puppy to try to make it up to her. After texting her a sincere apology, she sent her a picture of the puppy. I have no idea what to do. To be fair to mother-in-law, we said we decided to get a second dog that would mostly be for dear daughter. I'm sure her motivation was genuinely to do something nice for her, and she probably thought she was helping us by paying for a dog so we didn't have to. However, this is not what we wanted for a second dog. First of all, my husband was militant that he didn't want a Pomeranian when I considered one for our first dog, so he is going to be livid. For our second, we wanted a medium to large dog from either a reputable breeder or a shelter. The fact it's from a pet store guarantees the dog is from a puppy mill or backyard breeder, which means a high likelihood of health problems. It also feels incredibly manipulative that she got the dog and sent dear daughter a pic before asking if it was alright. Am I jumping to conclusions for thinking she intentionally did that so I couldn't tell her no without my daughter thinking I'm Satan? I also question if she texted her while she was at school so that there was no risk of me seeing it before her. I feel like we have no choice but to keep the dog, or else my daughter's heart will completely break. I have no idea how my husband is going to react, though. He's at work and I won't be able to discuss this with him for hours. Meanwhile, my daughter keeps talking about how excited she is about the dog and I don't know how to respond other than feigning enthusiasm for her sake. I'm very worried my husband will insist we can't keep the dog and I have no idea what to do if that's the case. On one hand, I want to respect him, but I also don't want to crush my daughter. Would I be in the wrong if I pushed to keep the dog? I'm a stay-at-home mom, so between me And dear daughter, it's not like he'd have to care for it at all. He would just have to exist around it. And I'd like to think he would warm up to it after some time. Also, I don't know what to say to mother-in-law at all. Any advice on how to handle this is very much appreciated. Also, husband and I discussed it, and we will not be keeping the dog. He talked to his mother, and apparently she cannot return it, so she is going to keep it. We told dear daughter that grandma is keeping the Pom, and we will be taking her to a shelter next weekend to pick whichever dog she wants as long as it gets along with the one we already have. She did not seem the least bit disappointed, as it means 2 new dogs in her life, so at least there's that silver lining to the situation. Dear husband and I are now in the process of figuring out the appropriate consequences for his mother, and plan on having a very serious discussion with her within the next few days. Thank you so much everyone for your advice. Abusive mother-in-law tried to abduct my child while he was trick-or-treating tonight. We have been no contact with my bat-crap crazy abusive mother-in-law since August of last year, when she slapped our child for saying no to her, and then went on a crusade to destroy our lives for standing up to her. We moved several months ago, and had no idea that she had found us. Tonight, while I was taking my 6-year-old child trick-or-treating, she ambushed us, and tried to get my son to get into her car. Thankfully I was with friends, and neighbors, and my other just yes mother-in-law, and they are able to take my kid down the street while I intercepted abusive mother-in-law, and called the police. Afterwards my neighbors told me they've seen her truck casing our house the past few days, and thought it was suspicious because it kept driving by slowly, and staring at her home. Last night I swore I saw a flashlight in my backyard, but looked out the window, and on our cameras, and didn't see anything, so thought I was just being paranoid. The police came, and abusive mother-in-law, and her insane husband fled. The police took my statement, and that of witnesses. All this went down in front of many of my neighbors. I was standing in the middle of the street crying, and talking to police. My child is traumatized, and terrified, and wants to know how she found us, and why she won't leave us alone. He's too scared to sleep alone. I'm so angry, and hurt, and scared. What the F is wrong with the woman? What could she have possibly been thinking? Why won't she just leave us alone? We just moved into this house. Our child loves his school. We are making friends. I don't want to live in terror because of her. It's been a very emotional and draining last 24 hours. I can't comment on the legal actions being taken right now, but the police are taking this seriously and we feel immensely grateful for their work. I have hired an attorney and am pursuing a criminal protection order. I also beefed up the security system on my home today and will be installing outdoor motion detector lights this weekend. We already have a kick-ass network of cameras and an alarm. That was the very first thing we did when we moved into this house because we knew this day was coming. We didn't think it would be so soon though. We do have a dog already. She never barks though. She is a very good girl with terrible gas and lots of slobber, who is great at cuddles and not great at guard dogging. We really can't get another dog though because we found out our son is allergic. No way we're going to get rid of our pooch, but we really can't get another. I'm definitely going to get little man into karate. He is excited about the idea and I think it will be good for him. I'm also trying to find a therapist for him. No luck in that department today, but at least I got most of the legal things rolling. I know it's harsh and I feel bad for my wife, but I really hope her mom goes to jail for a long time. DS said he hopes she goes to jail forever. He's 6, so he doesn't really understand what that means, but it serves her right to have her grandson hate her so much after everything she's put him through. My neighbors have really rallied for us and that has been an amazing experience. Abusive mother-in-law trying to abduct a child while all the families were trick-or-treating sure brought a lot of awareness to our situation, and we've received a lot of support so far and vows to watch out for her. I didn't get any sleep last night at all and have been crying on and off all night and day, so at least I look like a Halloween decoration today. Good times. Why weren't you home? So dear husband got a hysterical call from mother-in-law that she was about to break our front door to save our son because I wasn't home, and had left the toddler alone. Understandably this scared dear husband crapless because I never go anywhere, much less without my child. I am also pregnant, and have a heart condition, so his thought was I had collapsed. He calls me, and I answer as always, "What's up, yo?" Then I realized his voice was shaking, so my thought is something happened to a niece or nephew. Oh God, what's wrong? Mom said she's been beating on the door for 10 minutes, and can hear dear son screaming. Where are you? Sitting on the front porch like I always do to answer a call so I don't wake him up. Have you heard anyone knock today? No, I've just been in the kitchen mostly. Dogs haven't even left the porch. Does she remember which house we live at? He said he'd figured this all out. Asked her to send a picture of the house she was at. Now, we live in farm country. Most driveways here are several hundred yards long, like ours. Our dogs don't go bonkers at the mail/traffic/etc. because the road is so far past their territory. He sent me a very blurry, Very dark picture of the yard and house, like it was a drive-by. Also, our car was parked out front so dear husband was home. Oh, and you can see our Christmas tree lights. So basically she snapped a picture the one night, in December, she was allowed to visit. Meanwhile she is insisting dear son is in danger, that I am negligent and she should take the babies for their safety. Dear husband called her apartment manager, who called the cops for a wellness check. This is so far beyond her normal bonkers we're kind of puzzled. Then, later, dear husband got home doing his temple rubbing because this is so crazy. His father-in-law called him on his way home shrieking about us calling the cops, and trying to have her arrested just because she called to chat. So the version he was told is she called dear husband just to chit-chat through lunch, and thought they had a pleasant visit until a bunch of aggressive cops came, and beat on the door, demanding entry. Her apartment manager was desperately trying to stop them, in tears, but they threatened her. So dear husband called to have her arrested for calling him. Meanwhile, the police department had called dear husband pretty much right after lunch to tell him, she is very much mentally fine. There's no signs of issues, mental or health-wise according to the EMTs. Dear husband was relieved, but the cop added, she tried getting us on her side, saying she just misses you all, and wants a relationship with you. Seemed like every other older woman who can't accept that her kids are adults, but then she started asking what she needed to do so she could take custody of your son, an unborn baby because she couldn't trust that she would be allowed to see them. I told her about what CPS needs, how she has to qualify, all the huge obstacles in the way of that. Dear husband said they explained, and explained, and explained, but she just got an angry expression, and said something to the effect of, well I will just have to find another way then, I want those babies. Cop warned dear husband, this is not enough for a restraining order, but don't let your wife go anywhere alone with your son, and if she doesn't already, get her a gun. My professional advice is keep your mother where you can see her. This is the kind of thing that becomes violent when nobody watches, so she's fine. Just her garden variety bat crap. My mother-in-law accused me of cheating on my husband because our baby was dark-skinned. I didn't cheat. For context, I'm half native, but resemble my Jewish father pretty strongly. My mother is very dark-skinned, and honestly the fact that I came out so pale surprised everyone. I have dark hair, both my parents were natural brunettes, and brown eyes. I also never go outside, which further exacerbates my pallor. My husband is also pretty white, like a racist ex of mine once described my husband's exact features when describing his ideal woman: white, blonde hair, blue eyes, burns if I let him go out without sunblock, the works. He also has an extremely unique blood type, which means that he has to bank his blood in case he ever needs a transfusion. Well, it came time for me to give birth. Our daughter, surprising literally no one in the room, came out dark. I watched as everyone fawned over her, exhausted from giving birth, and somewhat immobile, and then his mother, who we'll call Beth, chimes in, she doesn't look like husband. What do you mean? I asked. Well, I don't mean to be impolite, but she doesn't look like husband. Does she actually belong to husband? My nurse kicked her out of the room before I could yell at her, but apparently the next nurse didn't get the memo. I woke up to my mother-in-law standing over my gurney, and was treated to a barrage of questions before she finally stopped. Dear daughter, his? Did you sleep with someone else? Are you sure? All incredibly insulting questions. Eventually, my husband saw this, and told her to leave. She left without much fuss, but stopped to tell him that he needed to get a DNA test to prove that our daughter was actually sired by him. This was despite the fact that our baby had the same, super rare blood type, which neither of us expected. Less than an hour later, my mother burst into the hospital room, and demanded to see her grandbaby. Beth nearly fell out of her chair. What are some family-related issues that you are struggling with? Am I unreasonable for hiding the truth from my son? I am really my adoptive son's half-sister, and I am hiding this from my son. My parents were both born in 1974, and I was born in 1992. As you can guess, they were both around 18 when I was born. My mom refused an abortion, but was adamant she would have nothing to do with me, so she bailed literally the day I was born. As soon as she knew I was okay, she managed to get herself discharged, and vanished, and I guess relinquishing her parental rights. My dad was shocked as he was only 17 at the time, but he loved from the start, and he managed to give me an awesome childhood. I didn't have anything to do with my mom, to be honest. She would come and go every few years, getting my hopes up to see her, and bailing when crap got real. I also later learned she was addicted to drugs, and begged my dad for money, so my image of her was not a good one. She got clean when I was about 22, and I decided to give her a chance. Things were great for a while, but I realized she was treating me more as a friend than a daughter, and then I got really bad with my mental health, and she bailed again. I decided that was my last straw, and cut her off. All was fine until she turned up in early 2015, heavily pregnant. I was shocked because, not being rude, she was approaching 41, and she didn't seem to have her life together, and that I didn't think she was motherly at all. She confirmed that the pregnancy was a mistake, and was considering giving him up. I was already married, and despite only being 23, I offered to adopt the baby as he was family anyway. My mom was fine with this. She gave birth, and my husband and I officially adopted him as our son. My mom bailed once again, and we never saw her. My mom has recently come into the picture, and she seems to be a changed woman. She talked to me through my dad, and he confirmed she fell back on drugs, but has gone to rehab, is in a stable job now, and a good relationship. I said that was great to hear, but why does this involve me? I learned that she wants my son and I to be in her life, as she misses her kids. I wasn't impressed, but I agreed to meet her myself to see what she had to say. She seemed genuinely remorseful, and acknowledged her mistakes. She then asked me how I was doing as an older sister, and I corrected her by saying I'm a mom. She got really angry, and said I had no right to make my son think I was his mom, and my husband is his dad. I reminded her that she relinquished her rights to both me and him, and she has no right to tell me how to parent. I also said he knows me, and my husband is his parents, my dad is his grandpa, and that if I've mentioned her briefly, he thinks she is his grandma. She called me a swine, and has called me one repeatedly. My husband and my dad think my mom is crazy, but I wonder if maybe I should tell my son the truth. I don't know. He's my son to me. I should add I haven't talked to my mom since this, and blocked her after her swine comments. I feel I need to make it very clear, I will tell him the truth one day. I just didn't think it would be now because he's only 5. Should I tell my son I am really his sister? I am my son's half-sister. Should I not have told my son, under age 10, the truth about his mother? When I was younger I had a casual sexual relationship with a woman, Beth. I met at a restaurant. We had sex more than 5 times, but less than 10 times. I texted Beth on a Friday night, which is when we normally hooked up, asking if she wanted to meet up, and she told me to lose her number. I did, and later found out she was pregnant. I contacted her again to see if the child was mine. She told me it wasn't, and that she would be getting an abortion anyway, and once again told me I needed to lose her number. I moved on. One day I got a message from Beth's mother. She accused me of abandoning her daughter, and my son. I told her I had no clue what she was talking about. She informed me that she had been taking care of Beth's son since he was 4 months old because Beth had a drug issue. At this point he was 1.5 years old, and she, Grandma, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She said she couldn't do it alone anymore. I ended up getting a DNA test, and found out I was the dad. His grandmother passed away shortly after I took custody. He's 7 now, 8 in September, and has been asking about his mom a lot lately. I have always told him that his mom loved him, but wasn't able to take care of him. He has accepted that answer until recently, and wanted more answers. I decided to be honest. He asked why he had to live with his grandmother before living with me. I told him, your mom and I weren't talking when she was pregnant with you. I didn't know she had you until your grandmother told me. After that I did everything I could to get you. He asked if he would ever be able to see his mom again. I said, I don't know. I don't even know where she is. She has a sickness called addiction. Sometimes when people are sick like that they make decisions that no one understands. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you though. He cried a little, and said he hopes his mom gets better. I was gutted, and called my mom. She said I shared way too much, and hurt him. She said I should have shared much less, and stuck with the she couldn't take care of you line even though he was asking for more. Also, thanks for all feedback I have received so far. All perspectives are read and considered. This happened yesterday, and he seemed okay today. He didn't say anything about his mother and I am not going to push it. I have always let him lead these conversations. I think I am going to look into therapy and support groups for children of parents battling addiction. I will also be looking into resources for myself to help me navigate all of these new situations as they arise. I have no experience with kids other than my own, so I may be overestimating my son's ability to understand things, and maybe someone can help me work on that. I'm honestly not even sure if his mom is alive. Last I heard she was, but that was a while ago. We have a lot to navigate and I could use some help from a professional, so I will be looking into that. Seriously, thanks for all of your suggestions, stories, and comments. It means a lot. Should I go no contact with my child's father's family? I am a mother to very young twin sons. My ex and I were both excited when we found out, but shortly after he began expressing doubts, and eventually said he didn't want to be a father, and he left when in the middle of my pregnancy. Shortly after, his parents rang me saying they had no idea what had happened until now. They didn't even know I was pregnant, and they wanted to be involved in their grandchildren's life. I spoke to my ex about them wanting to be involved, and he said he wasn't involved anymore, so it wasn't his choice. I talked to his parents, and agreed to them being involved so long as they left my ex out of it, and basically informed them, in nicer language than this, that I am the mother, this is my child, and I would be determining the amount of contact they had, and wouldn't hesitate to reduce or cut off contact if they pulled any crap. They said that's fair. For the most part, they've generally been respectful. However, when my sons were around 6 months old, I started seeing someone. This didn't go over too well with the grandparents, who tried to get me to end the relationship under concerns for the boys. Then they invited me over to talk it out, and my ex was there. He didn't know I'd be there with the boys, and left immediately. Later he told me that they'd been trying to set us up. I told them this wasn't okay, and ended up going very low contact with them for nearly 6 months. When the boys turned a year old, they apologized, and we've had regular contact since then. I'm now engaged to my partner. We've been together just over 2 years, and he proposed on our 2-year anniversary. We contacted the people we wanted to know first recently, and then told everyone else via social media. The everyone else included my ex's parents, who I am linked to on Facebook. This has prompted more questioning of my relationship from my ex's parents, who worry he won't be a good stepdad, and that his daughter, who is 2 years older than my sons, won't mesh with her stepbrothers, despite the kids getting along fine. They also informed me that they didn't approve of my choice in stepfather for my sons, and have begged me to reconsider my engagement. I reminded them of what I told them years ago, about how I dictate the contact they have with my sons, and that I didn't appreciate how they were talking about my future husband, and they called me a swine for holding that over their heads. I am seriously considering cutting contact. I've checked, and grandparents' rights don't apply as the father isn't on the birth certificates, so they couldn't force me to grant them custody or visitation. Legally, I'm in the clear. Morally, however, I'm unsure. I asked my partner, who said it was up to me, but he'd made an effort to keep in touch with his ex's family after she gave up custody. My mother baptized my less than a year-old son, and kept it a secret for almost a year. Now my boyfriend wants to keep her out of our lives. My parents are both Eastern Orthodox Christians, and believe that if a baby dies before baptism it goes to limbo, and not heaven. My boyfriend, father of my son, is a Protestant and I am an agnostic. We had an agreement that we wouldn't force any religion on our son, allowing him to choose later in his life. When I told my parents, my mother just laughed it off, and said that she would just secretly christen my son like it was done in the Soviet era. I believed she was joking because she's not a hardcore Christian, and she has always respected my decisions. Well, I was completely wrong. My mother usually visits us once a year in the springtime, and helps around the house because both my boyfriend and I work long hours. On Christmas, I found out that she had taken him to a church last March, and baptized him. With a priest, and everything. But the worst part is that the christening certificate was given to me, and my boyfriend as a Christmas present. My dad said, it was time we all shared this joy, and that we can now finally be relieved that God is watching over our son. This was the first time my boyfriend got visibly upset, but we couldn't do or say anything because half the family was there, and we didn't have a place to go because our home is in a different country. Yesterday, we returned home, and my boyfriend can't get over it. I also feel betrayed that my own mother would so blatantly ignore my decision. He has been very adamant about keeping her out of our house, and not visiting my parents anymore. He also says it's an insult to our parenting. They're indirectly stating that we are bad parents because we aren't religious. I don't really know what to do. I haven't spoken to her, yet, since I am very angry, and hurt and I don't want to say something I'll regret. Any thoughts would be very appreciated. Thank you. Also, just to clear some things up. 1. Eastern Orthodox don't sprinkle a little water on children like Catholics do. It's a pretty distressing ritual. They fully submerge them 3 times under cold water, naked. Most children cry, and can inhale water. There are videos on YouTube that show the process. 2. My son was baptized at 7 months old. Some people told me the math didn't check out. Again, it's not about the baptism. It's about my mother ignoring my, and my BF's wishes. She should have let me parent the way I have decided to. He's my son, not hers. Toxic mother-in-law freaks out over my daughter's imaginary black boyfriend. Here's a little snack for you all. DD, 5, has an imaginary boyfriend. She talks to him on her pretend phone. She asked me to make the 2 of them popcorn. Young love, I guess. At the in-laws yesterday, and she is gushing about her boyfriend saying he is very nice. I asked her what her boyfriend looks like, and she replied, well, he's black, and he has short green hair. My mother-in-law looked like someone slapped her across the face. She said, "What do you mean he's black?" And she replied, "in green hair." She pulled DH aside and asked, "WTF?" I have been laughing about it since. I hope her imaginary boyfriend is also an atheist and or a liberal, because her head would explode. Update: his name is Moa, and he likes his pound cake fried in a pan with butter, and topped with whipped cream. Interestingly enough, how she likes it. Soulmates. My mother-in-law almost killed my daughter. Now I am spending Mother's Day in the hospital. My 3-year-old daughter has several severe food allergies. Peanuts and eggs are the worst. She also can't have dairy or bananas. Mother-in-law is super obsessed with my daughter. This is our only child, and mother-in-law only grandchild, so I try to be understanding. I don't say anything about it when mother-in-law buys $300 dresses that my daughter will only wear once. I've encouraged a relationship between them. I've let mother-in-law have her way on holidays. I've never actually left them alone though. I can't explain exactly, but it just didn't feel right. Mother-in-law hasn't pushed for alone time like I've read about here. She offered to babysit, but let it go when we declined. Mother-in-law has always doubted my daughter's allergies. She's insisted that her princess of a granddaughter could never have something wrong with her. However, she's never tested to see if it's true. Until today, mother-in-law was over playing dress up with my daughter. I had a horrible headache, so I asked mother-in-law to watch my daughter so I could lie down for an hour. She agreed. 20 minutes later I'm woken up to mother-in-law shrieking that there's something wrong with the baby. I go running to daughter's room, and she's gasping for breath, and her lips are turning blue. I scream at mother-in-law to call 911, and use an EpiPen on my daughter. My daughter was able to take a deep breath, and I noticed she smelled like banana. The paramedics show up. We live out a mile from a fire station, start an IV, and give daughter meds so she can breathe. I tell one of the paramedics that mother-in-law fed my daughter something. He found part of a cookie on the floor. He confronts mother-in-law, who confesses she gave my daughter a peanut butter banana cookie, but she didn't know it would hurt her. I text DH, and ride to the hospital with daughter. They admitted her for observation, and DH met us there. Mother-in-law called him wailing about how she was just trying to show us nothing is wrong with daughter. We're just too paranoid, and have such odd ideas about daughter's health. We eat healthy, and daughter has received all the vaccines she can have. Oh, and we use sunblock. So odd, right? That swine admitted to DH that she's been making allergen-laced cookies for more than a year. She bakes a huge batch, and freezes them. She puts one in her purse every time she sees daughter just in case she gets a chance to slip it to her. I can't even wrap my head around this. Daughter is asking when mother-in-law is going to come see her. She wants to show grandma her pretty bracelet, hospital band with stickers on it. I'm so devastated right now. I never suspected mother-in-law would do something like this. Edit: the hospital has already reported it to police. A detective is going to come tomorrow to take statements, and talk about the next step. Mother-in-law thinks it's great my sister died. Trigger warning: death. Ever since my husband and I married, and wanted to start a family, we realized that we're having a problem with conception. After seeing many doctors, it turned out that we both have some fertility issues, and it's highly unlikely for us to have children together. That was an unexpected turn in our lives, and we discussed adoption from time to time, but this option didn't seem to sit well with us. We wanted our own children, and the fact that we cannot was really depressing and upsetting, but we didn't even consider divorce. We do love each other, and we were like, well, let's just live the life the way it is for us. Half a year ago, my sister and her husband died in a car accident. Their car collided with a truck that went into the opposite lane, killing them both instantly. Her death was unspeakable pain to me because my sister was my only living relative. There's no one else left from my blood family. They left behind 3 children whom my husband and I got custody of. They're 11, 7, and 1 years old. The youngest didn't realize what has happened because he's so little, but the older children both were thankful that they can come and live with their aunt instead of going to an orphanage. Our lives changed significantly, of course. We moved to a bigger house, so that every child would have their room, bought a stroller, crib, and lots of baby things for the baby nephew. In autumn I'll leave my job for a while as my youngest nephew is too young for kindergarten, and my niece and another nephew will go to school, so someone will have to stay at home to look after the baby. And my mother-in-law thinks this is the best thing that could have possibly happened to me and my husband. Ever since she heard that the children will be living with us now, she looked overjoyed, and was like, it's so great, it's so great. It's so amazing how life always fixes everything. Excuse me, mother-in-law, what's so great? That 3 small children lost their parents? That I lost my sister? What the F do you mean, it's so great? Yes, it is good that they had a relative who was willing to take care of them, But stop acting as if it should have happened this way, as if my sister should have died so that I could have her kids. Mother-in-law's excitement about this whole situation just makes my blood boil. She was like, you couldn't have children, and then God gave you some. You should be happy too. That's more than great. Now you can raise them. A house full of kids is the best thing that can happen to a person. Yes, I'm going to raise them, but I could never be the mother my sister was. She was a wonderful mom, and the kids are still mourning for her. I'd rather stay childless my whole life, and have my nephews and niece be with their real parents than have children this way when they're in my care because their parents died. And then she said something that made me almost smack her across the face. She said, and you should tell them to call you mom. You're their mom now, and they need to understand it, especially the youngest one. Hell no, mother-in-law. I'm their aunt, and my husband is their uncle, and that's how it's going to stay. As the baby grows up, we're going to tell him that we're not his real parents, we're his aunt and uncle. How the hell does she think it could happen? The eldest niece and nephew know their parents, and knows what happened to them. How could I ask from them to call me mom? It's just so very wrong. It's like mother-in-law doesn't consider it children's feelings at all. She thinks it doesn't matter to them who to live with. I'm sure they'd prefer thousands of times to live with their parents, not us. They're still mourning. Have some respect, mother-in-law. My husband is mad at her too. Maybe she thinks she's going to have grandkids now. Well, no. First of all, because she's no one to them, and secondly because her priorities are all mixed up. My husband is my hero today. Mother-in-law is here this week to look at retirement communities near us. The two we are looking at are about an hour away, and very nice. She came in yesterday afternoon, and we met her at the airport. First question out of her mouth, when greeted by her son, daughter-in-law, and only grandchild: why didn't you get a sitter? We tell her there was no need. We thought she'd like to see daughter, and daughter has never not been with one of her parents or close family friends, so why would we get a sitter? Mother-in-law responds that we're spoiling that girl, and something about this is how she'll turn out like me. I blink. I hope so. I'm her mother. Mother-in-law makes a noise, and finally looks at me. She knew I was pregnant, we told her, but I don't think she really absorbed this until she saw me. I am a small woman. I just am. And husband is a big guy who makes big babies, so it is obvious. Mother-in-law has to have another jab. Well, she won't be spoiled when you have that one. Don't you people believe in birth control? I have no words. I look over at husband. This is the sort of situation we've discussed in detail, but he is already handling it. He has paper out, and is writing down an address. It's her hotel. He hands it to her, and puts down her bag. She looks at him, like he is crazy. Asks what he's doing. That's the hotel address, for the cab. She says she thought we were taking her. We were going to get a cab with her, do the dinner obligation, and then I was going to avoid her as much as possible for the week, which with how she is, and the plans, would be easy. Husband answers, you made it clear you wouldn't want to be with me and that girl. You will not be rude to or about to my wife. You will not be rude to or about my children. She stares at him, mouth open. He goes on, I am going home with my family. There is a nice restaurant at cross streets, near the hotel. Get some dinner. We will see you, on the day we discussed, to look at the places. Have a good night. She has no time to reply. He puts his arm around me, and sort of guides me plus stroller out. I love this man. How is your relationship with your family and friends? Do you need any advice? My mother admits she broke up me and my partner. Results. Refresher. My ex and I were together for 3 years. We broke up because our parents, my mom, his dad, were getting engaged and began to make jokes about us being siblings, and publicly humiliated us multiple times by referring to us as siblings who are dating, all of which culminated in a siblings dance to Sweet Home Alabama at their wedding a bit over a week ago, which we refused to participate in, but did result in us getting back together. I later confronted my mother, who admitted that she and my partner's father entered their relationship with the intention of breaking us up because we'd admitted we'd toyed with moving an hour or so away from where we all are now, and they didn't want that. Somewhere along the way their ruse became real for them, resulting in their marriage, but renewed their determination to break us up so people didn't judge them for marrying when their kids are married. Update. My partner got home. I relayed the conversation to him, and he admitted that he'd thought that exact thing for a while and had talked to his dad about it shortly before the wedding, but his dad denied it, and he didn't want to sound bitter or blame our breakup on other people when we only got back together less than 10 days ago. We talked it out and we have a plan. 1. Sorting out something with my partner's sister so he can have a consistent, reliable mode of communication with her. 2. Full no contact with my mother and his father, starting the second we know the sister has a consistent method of communicating with us. 3. Looking at houses several hours away from them, but still close enough that his sister can visit. We do, however, have some issues and hesitations that we were hoping for advice on. His birth mother is toxic in her own right and is unlikely to help facilitate any sort of communication with the sister. His mom also happens to agree that our relationship is disgusting, although we're pretty sure this isn't because of the step-sibling thing. I'm Jewish, she's not a fan, but that's a rant for another day. We're unsure how no contact would work. We don't have grounds for a restraining order and it's not possible to just disappear, and my mom has actually tracked me down before because I missed a couple of calls from her. Most of my family I can take or leave, but there's a cousin and a great aunt I'd miss and I can't really stay in touch with them, but not mom. Same goes for my boyfriend and a couple of his relatives. Aside from that, thanks, everyone, for all the great advice I have received. We went through it together and there was a lot of great advice, a lot of which we're putting into effect. Am I the unreasonable one for telling my husband that I'm tired of feeding his mother? Brief backstory is my mother-in-law has been a widow for about 4 years now. She is 50, and in great health. Once she became a widow she has turned into the biggest mooch. I swear this woman should teach a class how to mooch. She has been given free trips all around the world, NYC, Vegas, Newfoundland, Chicago, to name a few. She also has completely stopped buying groceries. She either eats out or weasels her way into free meals at people's houses. For the last 4 years she arranges visits to see the grandchildren around mealtimes in order to get a free meal. She has never visited her grandchildren unless it's a meal involved in the last 4 years. Sometimes she comes about an hour before a meal, eats, then leaves to go to another function, which leads me to believe she only came for the food, not to see the kids. She's a very picky eater. I've gotten to the point that I'm resenting feeding her. I have started making food I know she dislikes on purpose to deter her, but then my husband gets upset with me. If we order out when she happens to show up for a meal she will have the audacity to place her own special order. Example, we order pizza, but she wants an order of ribs on the side, and you guessed it, never pays a cent. Then to top this all off, the woman expects me to wait on her. She won't even carry a dish to the sink, let alone help me clean up after a meal. Am I the unreasonable one for telling my husband I'm done, and visits need to be placed outside of meal times? He tells me most people wouldn't care as much as I do, and that I'm being unreasonable. Update. This has gotten much more attention than I expected. To answer some common questions. 1. She is financially stable. She has recently purchased a $30,000 SUV as an example. She works less than full-time by choice due to other monthly income flows. She is comfortable in the same lifestyle she had before father-in-law's death. 2. She does not babysit our children as she feels she has already raised her children. She will watch them an hour or two once, and a while though, so there is no real give or take in this situation which has been asked. 3. All over the world. When I mentioned mostly US cities seems to have hit a sore spot for people. Isolated Canadian here. Should have said all over North America, focusing mostly on the USA. Sorry. 4. She is mentally sound. She is not depressed. She obviously misses her spouse, but she's not living in a crippling depression. She uses her adult children for meals as well as her friends, and other family members. 5. Before father-in-law's death they hosted all meals. She would cook. She knows how to cook. She cooks, and hosts 0 meals now. 6. We are paying for our groceries, and take out food when she is here. I'm not sure why I've been asked if I'm paying for it. Yes? My husband and I both work full-time, and have a joint account. We are paying. 7. I'm not in a poor relationship with my husband because I've tried to keep the peace with my widowed mother-in-law, but after 4 years, and visits dwindled to only around a free meal is what brought me here. 8. We have been at her house occasionally when a mealtime approaches. She tells us she has nothing to cook, and she means it. She may have fruit snacks for the kids, but we usually just leave to eat. Thanks for everyone's time on my question. Update. My mother-in-law is demanding a new cell phone. We pay the bill, and this will make our costs go up $100. My mother-in-law is the queen of the mooches. My mother-in-law is a widow for 4 years. She has less money than when father-in-law was around obviously, but she works part-time, misses work for any, and all reasons, literally missing work once for having a bit of a runny nose. She scams trips, meals, groceries, etc. She really should teach a class how to mooch. About half a year ago she cried to her sons, my husband, and his brother, that she is broke. Brother took over her cable bill, and we took over her cell phone bill. Rather than giving her $100 or going to the provider and paying $100, I added her to our plan as an extra line, which meant we only have to pay $30 for her. I was begrudgingly fine with this. Suddenly she is demanding a new phone. I explained to her that the reason the extra line is so cheap is because she's not signing up for a brand new phone, which would not give us any discount. She has an iPhone 7, and truly it's fine. She hardly uses data, and uses her landline majority of the time for calls. She really uses it to text a few times a day. That's it. Where we live, cell phone plans aren't overly cheap, and if she wants a new phone we will be paying $300 a month, which is not happening. We pay $200 now with her line included. I made a few calls, and either she can 1. Get off our account, and pay the $100 a month for a new phone herself. 2. Save $1,200, and pay the phone outright, then we can keep the low monthly payment, and we will continue paying for it. 3. Keep using her perfectly fine iPhone 7, and we can keep the low monthly payment, and we will continue paying for. I refuse to pay $100 a month for her phone. She doesn't do anything for us. She doesn't babysit more than an hour or two every few months as she's done raising kids. She doesn't even cook meals, and makes her 2 sons do potluck for every meal she hosts. God, I have so many stories. Paying this cell phone was really bending over backwards for her, then she demands a new phone? I can't. Also, Canadians have terrible plans, especially us in part of Canadian where I live. We pay through the cheeks for anything. 10 GB shared between my husband, and my phone is $190 a month. When we added her line to share our GB, it raised to $220. Her line is only $30 because her phone is not contracted or financed. If she had gotten a new phone it would be $100. Bringing our 3 phones to just shy of $300 a month. We have unlimited calls within Canada, and unlimited text with the 10 gigabytes. So nothing overly fancy. We just get bent over up here for cell plans within little competition between providers keeps the cost up. My internet in my home alone is $90, and it's not even the fastest they offer. Pensive face, link to in description. Dealing with toxic mother-in-law's text. She sent me this text: "This is our back and forth. Toxic mother-in-law, you are going to be a bad mother. You're a terrible daughter-in-law. You don't respect where your husband comes from. Me. You should show me the respect I'm due. You wouldn't have dear husband if it wasn't for me. You think you can make decisions for this family, and do what you want? You remember you joined my family, and you need to learn to keep your butt in line. Stay in your place. When I call, and ask for information about whatever you give it, I don't care what my son told you or directed you to do. You joined my family. Therefore you listen to me. And yes, for the record, the last time I spoke to dear husband I called you the next word. You are black. Stop being so damn sensitive. You people are so damn sensitive. I call your dear son-in-law Inc. Does she get bent out of shape? No. But you think you are the head of this family. You are not. I am the head of this family. And you need to show some respect. God forbid something happened to dear husband, who would you turn to then? Me. Who would you need? Me. I respond. Lol, I don't know whether to pity you or use this as proof that you need a psychological evaluation. I would say girl bye, but I don't need to respond. But I want to, so I am. Why not? First of all, you don't know me and I am going to be a kick-butt mom. The best. You know how I know? Because I have had the worst mom, and so has dear husband, and we both know as parents what not to do when raising children by the way the two of you attempted to raise us. As far as showing you the respect you are due, I always have, but you seem to think that everyone bowing down, walking on eggshells, and letting you into areas of our lives, and marriages that you simply don't belong equates respect. It would just make me a doormat. I would be disrespecting myself, and my marriage if I allowed it. It is because dear husband and I respect ourselves is why we have set boundaries, which this text clearly crosses. You may be the head of your family, however, my husband has pretty much removed himself from that physically, and emotionally, and certainly financially. And as for my place, I do stay in my place right beside my husband. When my husband says don't tell my mom such, and such, I follow that directive because that is my place as his wife. You can call me as many N-words as you like, all it shows is your ignorance, and gives us more of a reason to keep our low away from you. As far as what I would do, God forbid something happened to dear husband, I will be just fine as he has left everything to me, including his trust fund, which you have had no control since he was 25. Sweetie, he's 46. Let it go. What you don't get is we love each other, and realize all we have is each other, and we are okay with that. When I first met you I really did want to make you happy as a daughter-in-law, but as you showed who you are, especially since I've been pregnant, you killed that emotion completely. All this text did was confirm what we have been thinking, that you are certifiable, and we need to cut all ties. And yes, dear husband will see this as well as all sister-in-laws, and brother-in-laws, and any aunts, cousins, etc. Because we are not the only ones who feel you are out of line. But I won't name names. The screenshots of this very conversation will be going up on the Book of Faces, the Graham, and placed as public so all of your country club friends, neighbors, society can see how crazy and racist you are. And after I send you this text you will be blocked, and if I have to we will change our numbers because you should not be around minors, and you will not be around ours. May God be with you because we are not. So that was that. My husband is so mad, he went for a run. I told him he shouldn't be because she can hurt us, and I'm not angry, I'm just emphatic about her not being in our Lowe's life. Having the talk with older kids. Is there anything off limits or lines that shouldn't be crossed? I feel like there is so much information for having the talk with younger kids, but less is out there about these talks with older kids. My kids are 20, 18, and 15. My 20-year-old called me last weekend after a date. She was frustrated that the guy she went out with expected to be intimate after, and was ranting about how annoying it is to find a guy who seems so nice, but when you don't take him back to your room to do it, they ghost you. I was sharing my own stories to try and relate it to her. I didn't get too graphic, but talked about how I experienced the same exact thing, and how pushy some people can be about it. My 18 and 15-year-olds are both boys, and they were around when I was video chatting my daughter, so we talked about it a little after. After some discussion I flat out asked the boys if they were intimately active. The 18-year-old said he was, and the 15-year-old said he wasn't. I figured the older one was. He has been dating his girlfriend since the summer and I know how young romance goes. He said they use protection, and had did it for the first time on Christmas Eve. He offered that information. I didn't ask. I talked to my husband about it later that night. I casually asked if he knew our 18-year-old was actively doing it. He said he figured as much, and asked how I knew for sure. I told him our son told me, and he thought it was a little weird for a boy to be that open with his mother about his intimate life. Am I crossing some line or boundary here? I wouldn't have pressed if my son was uncomfortable, but he offered up details, and didn't seem bothered by the conversation. Are there really some things that should be unmentionables when discussing intimacy with your kids? Should it all be talked about at hypotheticals? My husband and I both grew up in households that never talked about it. He is from a strict premarital, doing it as a sin Catholic family, so I am not sure where the normal line is. Is everything going well? If not, please tell us what is bothering you. Please, maybe we can help. My wife is pregnant with another man's baby after we took a break and wants to keep it. I don't. What should we do? We are both in our 30s, and we've been together for 14 years, married for 10. Before our relationship, we hadn't had lots of previous relationships each. In this last year, we started to have loads of issues and decided to go on a break in January, just to take the time to maybe appreciate each other for a bit and see what life's like on our own, and maybe see other people if we decided to. On our break, we both were okay with us both experimenting and being with other people, and I've had a fling and I knew she did too. So a few weeks back, with the current pandemic and before we had lockdown here, we decided to move back together and carry on our relationship. Now as soon as we moved back in together we talked about our experience with other people. I'd been with someone casually, definitely with protection, and she'd had a one-night stand with a guy. However, in her situation she was super drunk and was sick, so she thinks she threw it back up, and it's one of those if you don't take it at the right time every day, you could get pregnant. So she has an STI test, clear, and a pregnancy test, positive. We're child-free, or at least I thought we were, and always had an agreement that if we ever had an accident we'd have a termination. The baby is definitely not mine, absolutely not possible. So she had a termination scheduled for last Thursday. She came to me on the day and said she just couldn't go through with it. She wants to keep the baby. Now I freak out. I've told her we've always been child-free and definitely I don't want kids still. I don't want to raise another man's kid. She's apologized to me for being so stupid, but is saying she is 100% sure. I've been trying so hard to convince her she shouldn't keep it, but she's just not having it. She said we can raise the kid as our own. I'm not having it. It would have been enough if she had a kid of mine, but at least I could accept that it'd be my kid if that happened. This kid will be another man's. Nothing to do with me. What the sweet F do I do? I know the sensible answer is walk away and cut your losses, but it's not that easy. I love her and we've been in each other's lives for so long. Plus we're in the middle of a quarantine and she's got nowhere to go. I'd feel horrible kicking a pregnant woman out to fend for herself at a time like this, but I don't want a kid, ever. Not even if it was my own. DLDR, me and wife went on a break and she got pregnant accidentally with another man's child and wants to keep it. I don't, as we've always been child-free. Update. To my wife is pregnant with another man's baby after we took a break and wants to keep it. Okay, so we're looking at getting a divorce. I've spoken to a solicitor, have got my options and have started the process. So it's actually going to happen. I'm getting divorced. I got lots of amazing advice, but the overwhelming was that I shouldn't be forced to raise a child that isn't mine or try to get someone to have an abortion. To be honest, I knew that deep down. I just didn't want to admit it and was scared about facing the fact that our relationship was already damaged. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The one moment where I snapped that made me start the process was Monday. We had more or less confirmed we were going to divorce, but hadn't started anything at that point yet. She tried to initiate sex. That was it for me. That was my cue. I was done. Like, we're talking about a divorce, ending our marriage, and you want to jump. Massive argument and led to me actually asking her for the divorce. After we calmed down, we both agreed this is the best course of action. And she is equally as committed as I am to getting a divorce and agrees it's for the best. We're obviously freaking gutted. We still love each other so much. But this is too big a thing. I am 100% sure I'm never having kids, looking into finally having a vasectomy after this whole lockdown goes away. And she is 100% sure she wants this kid, which I can't get my head around still. And she says she can't believe it either, how much her mind has changed, especially as she was so militant about being child-free. But she says it's like something has just changed in her and she can't fight it. I think it's bullcrap, but there you go. We've found the guy who knocked her up on social media. She's messaged him and they're now talking about what to do and making plans for crap. I don't know what they're talking about and I don't give a F honestly. Probably scans, money, names, etc. As long as they keep me out of it. Do I say good luck? He looks so young though. And his username where I found him has 97 in it, so I think he's only 22 or 23. Don't get me started on that one. So God knows what the future holds. For now she's staying here in a separate room until we work out where she goes, but is likely to move in with her half-sister as the lockdown situation changes. The house is mine. I inherited it and she agrees as such. Whether she'll be that way after getting a solicitor remains to be seen. But I have the paperwork and as it was before we were married, so I understand she doesn't have much of a chance. And I'm not letting her have the dog. She'll have a nice shiny new kid to walk away with, and won't have time to look after a senior dog and a kid. I'll fight for these two things tooth and nail. I'm angry, hurt, sad and weirdly relieved it's out in the open now. Like I can start chapter 2 of my life. DLDR, argued, agreed on divorce and I've started divorce proceedings. She's staying here until she can move out. She's found the baby daddy and is making plans with him. Am I the unreasonable one for adopting a kid my friend's sister had planned to adopt? My wife and I had adopted my niece Katie when she was 3, and when she was 6 we were looking to adopt another child. My wife's friend introduced us to her sister, Jill, who was also trying to adopt. About 2 months into being friends with Jill, she found a boy she wanted to adopt, Henry, who was 7 at the time. Jill took Henry out for the day. My wife and I were taking Katie to the park, so we arranged to meet them there. Henry and Katie instantly got on. Henry was a great kid, but very hyper, presumably because he was excited to meet Jill. Jill commented to me that she hadn't been able to calm Henry down all morning, and asked if we could watch him for a second while she took a breather. We agreed and spent the time talking to Henry, who seemed to fit in well with our existing family dynamic. Eventually it was time for us all to leave, so we went our separate ways. Several weeks later, Jill called me to say that the adoption had been rejected by the agency. Apparently Henry himself had refused it, so the agency had to decline. A few months after that, Jill found a different child she wanted to adopt and started the process, while we were invited to an open day at a local home, where several prospective parents and families meet the kids. When we were there we saw Henry. We were using the same agency as Jill, and it was coincidence or luck depending on how you look at it. Henry remembered us. We still got on great with him, and we ended up adopting him. From what Henry has said, he rejected Jill as she didn't have a lot of patience and wasn't willing to work with him, while we were a bit more flexible. We didn't tell Jill because at this stage we'd only ever met her twice, once for coffee, and then the park, and while we'd had some contact with her over text and phone calls, we didn't know how she'd take this. We also didn't tell our friend, but after adopting Henry we posted an updated family photo on social media, which a different friend shared, and that was how the first friend saw it. She told Jill that we'd adopted him, and Jill replied to her post that she'd considered us friends and we'd adopted her son out from under her. We clarified the timeline immediately, but our friends were shocked at us, and we received several messages saying they couldn't believe we'd done that and saying Henry should essentially be seen as off-limits to us because he'd rejected Jill, some even calling us greedy because we already had my niece while Jill had no kids. We felt that was absurd and ended up blocking most of them. But to this day whenever we see any of them they're still appalled that we adopted Henry. Even the people who supported us joke about us stealing other people's kids. Are we being unreasonable? My ex-boyfriend wants to meet up and discuss why we broke up, but I'm cautious of him. I'm going to start off by saying that I am Asian American and I'm 30 years old. I am not Japanese, Chinese or Korean. I met my boyfriend Joe, who is 28 years old currently, in 2018 at a summer festival. He's white, good-looking, blonde-haired and blue eyes. He looks like what an average American male looks like according to my sisters. He's also kind, smart, selfless and incredibly talented. We became friends first before he asked me out last summer. I was on cloud 9. Joe is my first actual boyfriend too. I'm shy and an introvert, so it takes a lot for me to open up. He was the first man who gave me attention and really interacted with me. He was everything I was looking for in a future partner. Loyal, honest, faithful and open-minded. The last description is important because while I'm not a cosplayer, I love to dress in rather vibrant, eye-catching and out-there fashion clothing. Sometimes I like Lolita style. Sometimes I prefer bright colors, sometimes I like traditional dresses. Examples: link 1 in description. Link 2 in description. My boyfriend knew how much my sense of style is important to me since I came from a strict family who dictated what I wore even as an adult. I was only allowed to wear pants and sweaters because dresses and skirts were for promiscuous women. My parents calmed down a lot since I left their house, but I choose not to visit them unless I have to. I also decided for myself that I will wear whatever I wanted to and I will not be ashamed of my choices. So when Joe told me that he loved the way I dressed and would not change it for the world, it made me fall in love with him. His actions proved he meant what he said and I let down my guard around him. His acceptance meant a lot to me because there are not a lot of men that I have encountered who are not weirded out by me. However, right before quarantine in March, we headed out to his family's home in another state and a completely different side of him came out. He was extremely critical of the clothes I wore in front of his family and friends and pushed me to change multiple times until I was suitable enough for his taste. He even told me to tone down my Asianness whenever I would wear Asian-styled clothings. This honestly broke my heart. I found the perfect partner, but he only liked the flamboyant part of me only when I could be his dirty little secret. He lied to me about accepting me to get what he wanted. The worst part was that he sounded like my own father, judgmental, embarrassed to be seen with me and disgusted with my choice of clothings. It was very triggering. I left a day earlier than our scheduled date because Joe made the abrupt decision to stay at his parents' home before the quarantine was mandated. He assumed I would stay too, but I used my own money to buy a ticket to go back home. There was no way I was going to stay under his controlling thumb. I also broke up with him the same day and thought that would be it. However, now that things have calmed down a bit, Joe texted me this past weekend telling me he was coming back and wants to talk. Also, Joe is refusing to chat on the phone or answer any questions I have. He only wants to meet in person. Admittedly, I do not want to talk with him nor see him again. But I do also want to know why he had lied to me, why he acted the way he did. I did not ask before since I was still in shock and did not want to cause a scene at his parents' house. What are some things I should do and say if I do decide to meet him, and how do I protect myself? He's my first relationship and it still hurts to even think about him. Am I the unreasonable one for putting up a fence when my neighbors went away for the weekend? I used to put up fences for a living. My wife and I, both women, recently bought my aunt and uncle's old home. The house has a large back garden with narrow paths along the sides of the house, and this leads to a front garden that's about 1/3 of the size of the back, and is half grass and half paving stones. They have neighbors either side with the same setup. The house is number 85. There is no fence between 85 and 83. 83 has 3 kids under 10 years old. My back garden has a lot of space to run around, and as there is no fence and my cousins are similar ages to 83's kids, my aunt and uncle often let 83's kids come over and play with my cousins, and 83's kids have continued to use the garden after my aunt and uncle left. I have nothing against kids, nor does my wife, but we have plans for the back garden. These include putting up a shed, maybe a few flowers, and we're starting the adoption process soon, so we want our kid to have space to play outside. I went out and measured the property lines a couple weeks ago, and the husband of 83 came out and asked what I was doing. I explained about the fence, said I would pay for it, and put it up myself, told him about my former job doing exactly this, and asked when would be best for me to do it. He said not to do it at all. I asked why. He said they have a baby and I can't be bashing about with hammers and the like. I said I would try to keep it down, but I would like to do this. He then asked why I needed to because things were fine as is. I said it's nothing personal, but I'm putting up a shed, and I just don't want his kids coming onto my property and getting hurt. He then said I can't put up the shed for the same reason as the fence, and I could see we weren't getting anywhere and went back inside. Then Thursday night, I'm coming home from work and I see the dad loading bags into their car. Saturday morning and the car is still gone, and has not been seen since Thursday. I figure they've gone away for the weekend, and as the issue with me putting up the fence was the noise for the baby, now would be the time to do it. I bought the fence materials that day. I used wooden posts, panels, and gravel to hold it in place. Whole thing was done by Sunday lunch. The fence posts are 1.8 meters and half of that is underground. These things aren't moving until the end of time. It's on my property and less than a meter tall, so I didn't need permission from council or 83. They got back Monday night, and this morning I've woken up to knocking. The husband wants me to get rid of the fence, says it's an eyesore and he's worried his kids will get injured on it. I tell him it's on my property and it's staying. He says he should have been consulted because it's surrounding his property and his wife hates it and thinks it's really ugly. Legally I'm in the clear. Morally, am I the unreasonable one? More info. It is a picket fence made of a pale wood. It looks clean and polished on both sides, but my side is the one with visible building markers, e.g. there is a nail in my side of the fence. There is no such issue on his side and I am open to painting it. Also, in the nicest, most respectful way possible, I built fences as a routine part of my job nearly every day for the better part of 4 years, and have a qualification specifically in putting up various types of fences. So I know what I'm doing when it comes to putting up good-looking fences. Am I the unreasonable one for not apologizing after I ruined my parents' vow renewal? Please hear me out. When I was 12 my parents divorced and began seeing other people. When I was 14 Dad met someone, Helen. Helen had 3 sons. The oldest son, Jake, was only a few months older than me. Of their 6 combined kids, I have 2 brothers. I was the only girl and was excluded a lot by Dad, who would take all 5 boys to do guy stuff while I was left to my own devices. As a result, I only met my potential stepbrothers less than 5 times in the entire 2 years Dad and Helen dated, and when I did it was all 8 of us at once, so there wasn't much one-on-one. When I was 16, Dad proposed to Helen only to realize he still loved my mom. He and Mom got back together shortly after, and remarried when I was 18. When I was 25, I ended up indirectly working for Jake. We recognized each other and had a quick chat every now and again. But due to the nature of my work we couldn't have any sort of relationship, including friendship, in case it looked like favoritism. At 26, my contract ended and I moved to a new workplace. On my last day at my old workplace Jake asked if we could exchange numbers. We got together a few months later. We agreed to take it slow due to his son, so it was very casual for the first few months and we only saw each other once or twice each month. At 27, I tried to tell Mom about Jake. Before I got to the part about him being Helen's son, Mom started an argument because Jake has a kid, and I got so distracted by the arguing about Jake's son I didn't even get around to telling her who it was I was seeing. I called Dad to try and tell him I was seeing Jake and he said he didn't want to hear whatever I had to say because I'd really upset Mom and they'd contact me when Mom was ready. Now Jake and I are both 28. Been together nearly 2 years. We moved in together last August. Mom sent me an invite to hers and Dad's vow renewal back in January. Given current circumstances, the renewal was moved online. I went into the office to take the call, logged in, greeted everyone, and found out a few people were late, so we talked while we waited. During this Jake's son came in asking for help with his homework. Jake then came in to take him out, and Dad saw him and went, "Jake?" Mom said, "Who's Jake?" Dad said he was Helen's oldest son. Mom asked me what was going on and I told her we're a couple. Suffice to say, this was not taken well. Mom looked upset and physically left the room and Dad apologized before ending the call and going after her. The call was still active and everyone else on it sort of said what the FOP, so I just awkwardly ducked out. That was yesterday and since then I've received messages from everyone on the call, plus the ones who were late. They feel I should apologize for ruining their renewal. I am an adult. I am sorry my parents were blindsided, but I won't apologize for my relationship. Plus if they'd heard me out 7-ish months ago they wouldn't be blindsided now. Am I the unreasonable one? How are your relationships with your friends and loved ones? Need any advice? What do I do after my failed proposal? My girlfriend rejected my proposal, and it resulted in a huge argument where she slapped me. I'm not sure where to go from here. My girlfriend is 27, and I am 36. Okay, so basically we've been together for nearly 2 years now and we're pretty serious. We have been on holiday together. She stays at my house most nights and she's met my family and they love her a lot. I've never met her family. They don't know I exist. They think she's single. I'm a white British guy, and she's a Pakistani British woman. And she's from a Muslim background. Basically, even though she's nominally Muslim, she hardly practices the religion at all. She doesn't eat pork and vaguely tries to follow Ramadan and celebrate Eid. But she hardly prays, doesn't wear Islamic dress, drinks, smokes joints, has sex, etc. which doesn't bother me because I'm not religious at all. I decided I love her so much. I proposed to her on Valentine's Day. She was so stunned she broke down in tears. She said she needed time to think about it. So yesterday she says she's thought about it and as much as she loves me, she can't marry me. Basically she says because of our backgrounds her family would never accept me. On top of not being a Muslim, I'm a different race, divorced, have a child, that I don't have custody of, and tattooed. They'd vaguely accept me if I was a Muslim. But I'm an atheist and don't think I should convert if I don't believe in the religion. They've apparently been putting a lot of pressure on her to get married and have even talked about an arranged marriage. I say I think she could just put her foot down, tell them about us and take the consequences. She was mortified, and said she could lose her family, and they'd be shunned by the community. She said like you're not good enough for them to marry me. I was really pissed off and said something like so I'm good enough to get pissed and high with and do you up the bum, but not good enough to marry. I guess that was a red flag to a bull, so she slapped me hard and screamed at me to F off and stormed out. We haven't spoken all day. We never argue ever. But this one was bad. I don't know what to say. I love her so much and I know she loves me, but I don't know if we can go ahead. I've committed to her in every way I can, but it doesn't feel 100% reciprocated. Can we come back from this? Update. Okay. So one piece of advice I got really stuck with me, basically saying that if she really loves me and wanted a future she'd stand up for me, which I appreciated. So after I read that, I rang her. She straight away apologized for slapping me and said that was out of line no matter what I said. I said as much as I appreciate the apology, that's the last time she ever puts her hands on me. If she does it again we're over. I basically said then that it's make or break. I said if she loves me as much as she claims then no matter how hard it would be, she'd stand up for me and show me off to her family and write for me, and if they didn't accept me then she's got me. I said that I won't speak to her again, unless she womans up and comes clean with them. I won't accept any less. She went so quiet for ages, then went okay I've got it, I know what I have to do, love ya, and hung up. God knows what she meant, but if she decides her family and culture are more important then I suppose I won't hear from her again. If she decides it's me she wants I will, but I won't be screwed around. TLDR. Had proposal turned down by girlfriend on the grounds of culture and religion and we argued so badly she slapped me. Can we come back from here? Update. I wasn't expecting to hear from her again, so I logged onto my Instagram and Facebook the next morning and she's gone public with our relationship, like sharing pictures of us together, changing her relationship status to in a relationship and really showing us off. We weren't linked in social media before because her family was on her, so this was a massive thing. I tried to touch bases with her, but I couldn't get a hold of her. So basically yesterday, I got home from work and she was in my house waiting for me. She had a black eye, thick/split lip and her fingers were all swollen on one hand. Basically, after she went public her family demanded she go around that night to explain herself. So she did and she explained it like a grilling. She said they were asking her about me, and basically talking crap about me when she gave them details. So she defended me and told them she was in love and wanted to marry me. Apparently her brother got so incensed, punched her a few times in the face and in trying to escape her hands got trapped in the door so he slammed it on her fingers. I took her to the hospital and she's got medical treatment. She's now staying with me. I'm not having her go back to them again. She's apologized to me so much for how we spoke last. I heard her crying herself to sleep last night, so I've tried to be there for her. She said she doesn't want to report them or pursue criminal charges, and she never wants to see them again. I feel so guilty. I mean, yeah, I did want her to stand up for me and herself, but I didn't want her to get injured. But we're together now. Update. So we've just talked, and she's decided she does want to report it to the police after all. I think it was after I've been talking on here and done my bit of research on the internet and looked at all the stories where people have got killed for being in our situation. We're also looking into several of the local domestic abuse resources in our area so she can get some support for what she's been through. Then, basically we rang the police and they came around to take a statement. They're taking it extremely seriously and are hooking us up with someone who can help with these sorts of issues. So sorry, I'm so tired I can't remember the name of them. We're going to try and go to get her stuff from her parents with a police escort later, which as you can imagine she's really nervous about. TLDR, girlfriend came public with us, got abused by her family and she's now with me. Should I run away on our honeymoon? Not from my husband. My husband and I are on our honeymoon. His parents gifted us a week in an all-inclusive hotel at no cost to us as a wedding gift, and we were really grateful. On arriving we found out that they'd also booked a room at this hotel for themselves for the whole week and want to do group things. Outside of this, We see them maybe 2 or 3 times a year for a couple days at a time, as he finds them a bit overbearing at times and they don't really like me. It's not like they're in the room next door or anything and we can still do stuff in our room alone. But they knock on our door regularly, waking us up at 6 a.m., making us get all 3 meals a day with them. We've tried telling them we wanted alone time for our honeymoon and they shrugged us off, saying that's what our room is for. We also tried faking illness to get out of eating with them and they just got room service to our room and sat with us while we faked stomach aches. My husband snapped earlier and said this whole thing was way over the line and they had no right intruding on our honeymoon of all things. And they told us that they paid for this whole thing and that as adults we're allowed to take holidays at the same time to the same place. We've been talking and we saved up to pay for our own honeymoon before they surprised us. We still have the money we would have spent in our joint wedding/honeymoon account. There's another town we wanted to go to on our honeymoon and we looked it up, and we could get tickets from here to there and then back home for less than £60 total. We could also book a few days in a nice hotel for about half of what's left in our wedding/honeymoon fund and use the remainder of the week we booked off in another town without his parents knowing we'd left until we had. It's 9 p.m. now. There's trains from here to the other town every hour, plus more half-hourly trains tomorrow. Would it be unreasonable if we ran away from his parents without telling them? Update. Our train should be arriving in our final station in the next 30 minutes. We've found a hotel that's able to take us tonight, and we are very excited about the next 4 days. I no longer want a relationship with my parents. They cut me off. Am I being unreasonable? I'm a student. My parents make enough money that when I went through student finance to get my maintenance loan I was told I could only get the minimum, just over $3,000 a year, because finance is calculated from what your parents earn and there's an assumption that your parents will help you out. I'm on a high-intensity course and I wasn't sure how I'd be able to balance studying and schooling, so when I found out I was going to get minimum I told my parents I wanted to either take the coming year to save up, and then go to my first choice university a year later than planned, or go to my second choice now because I wouldn't be able to afford to live in the city my first choice is in. My parents then said that they would pay my rent if I went to my first choice on schedule. They set me up in a studio flat, so all I had to do was get a part-time job to cover the cost of food and bills. On 10th February, my 20th birthday, they called me and said that I was relying on them too much and needed to find out what the real world was like by earning my own money, so they would cover my rent and phone for that month, so until end of February, and after that I was on my own. Then said that they were still my parents and they loved me, and wanted me to stay in touch, just learn some independence while doing this. I begged them to reconsider, but they ended the call, so I had 11 days notice that I would have no flat or phone. I begged my university for emergency housing, but they said that I had no proof I'd been cut off so they couldn't do anything. I emailed my parents asking them to write a letter stating they'd cut me off so I could sort my student finance and emergency housing. They said no. I asked work if I could take on more hours and was told that due to my contract I can't do any more than I'm already doing. So I'm now looking for a second job. I'm sleeping on a friend's sofa until a place I can afford opens up, and as I still don't have proof I've been cut off for student finance, I will probably have to drop out this summer. I got a Facebook message from them today telling me they were disappointed I didn't call on Mom's birthday a couple days ago, and that I've not given them my new phone number yet. I responded telling them the position I'm currently in and that I no longer want a relationship with them. I've gotten a bunch of messages from them and my brother's asking me to reconsider. My friend says I shouldn't feel bad, but I feel incredibly guilty, and like a spoiled brat, because I don't love my family for their money. I love them because they're my family, but at the same time they've really screwed me over here. Am I the unreasonable one for not wanting a relationship with them? Update. I messaged them asking why they cut me off, saying the least they could do was explain why they're fine leaving me homeless. They responded, "My friend, the one I'm staying with, is an out and proud lesbian. There are maybe 2 posts about me on her social media, one being a group shot of us and some people we were studying with in the library with me and her sat together, and another from a couple days before my birthday where she posted a photo of me when we went to lunch because we weren't planning on seeing each other on my actual birthday. And in the caption she refers to me as princess in a clearly joking way. My brothers then showed our parents and told them I was a lesbian, and she was my girlfriend. So now I have proof that they cut me off, proof they're homophobic and confirmation that they can and will switch on me at the drop of a hat, as well as proof of my brothers, who are older than me and living with our parents, being jealous crapheads. They didn't just tell me this on the phone because they hoped I'd figure it out, which is tricky given that it's not freaking true. Apparently there's enough affection still there for them to expect a call on Mom's birthday, but not enough to not totally F me over. So yeah, never talking to them again. Any of them. I've sent the screenshots to the person I spoke to in emergency housing, though I have been warned that for something called emergency housing it's not very fast. My friend has said I can stay with her as long as I need. The reply my parents sent hasn't explicitly said the phrase "we cut you off because," but given the context of them replying to my message asking why, it should be enough. Thanks everyone. I felt really lousy cutting them off over finances, but now that I know they're pure freaking evil I don't feel so bad. I've also sent my parents the screenshots of my brother confirming that he and my brother lied about me, and they are very apologetic, but that doesn't change anything. As my brothers live with my parents, I hope they're all very happy together right now. New plan. Changing the focus of my studies going into third year to focus on the subjects I want to do, not the ones my parents wanted me to do. If I do this, I have a far better shot at getting a work placement. It's far less popular than my current field of study, and if I get a work placement I can spend my third year working full-time, earning a bit of cash, and then resume my studies the following year. Failing this, and if I can't get any help from the university or student finance, then I will defer my third year and work full-time for a year. My friend says I can stay with her as long as I need and has said if I can't get emergency housing, but can sort out my placement or another job, then we could get a place together next year, so I have a confirmed roommate. Okay, also so here's the thing. I might not be straight, I'm figuring it out and I don't really have the capacity to go through it right now, but I've never said anything to anyone, at all, ever, because I knew my parents were homophobic, so my brothers may have thought they were lying, but they also may have been inadvertently correct, and I have to say being correct by accident is very typical of them. Update. Results. So here's how everything has shaped up. I won't be getting emergency housing from uni. I've not heard anything and there's less than a month left before summer, so I'd be shocked if I got it at this stage. I'm still living with my friend. She got me a job at her workplace, but refuses to take any rent off me, so I've been repaying her by sneakily buying food and cooking her dinner as I get home before her. We have plans to move in together this summer, ready for next year. My parents have done a complete 180 and now want me to forgive them so badly that they're still refusing to sign a letter showing they've cut me off, so I'm still screwed with student finance. My parents have also offered me my truck back, so me, my roommate, and 2 more friends will be going to my parents' house sometime soon to collect my truck and some things from my room. My tutor has written a letter for me for student finance which they might accept, but I'm waiting to hear back. My course changes were approved, so now I'm doing what I want, not what my parents want, and it looks like I got my work placement, so I'll be either working and studying part-time for 2 years or working all next year and finishing studies the year after. Either way I'll be adding an extra year to my course, but I get paid and get relevant experience in my field. Ultimately, everything seems to have worked out as well as it could. Thanks for all the great advice, and I was truly concerned that I was in the wrong, so thanks for the reassurance. 2. I will also be booking a session with the on-campus mental health professional because this has really shown a light on just how screwed up my family is. Thanks again, smile. Would I be unreasonable if I cancel my sister's wedding? It was my wedding first. I was meant to get married on the 7th of February, which was mine and my ex-fiance's anniversary. We ended the engagement shortly after the new year because he cheated on me. The wedding was initially planned with just my money, but was very low-key, and my parents asked if they could put up some additional money to make the whole thing a bit bigger. By the end, about 60% of the wedding was paid for by me and 40% my parents' contribution. My ex and I had agreed that I would pay for the wedding while he covered the honeymoon. My ex left me to deal with canceling the wedding as his money wasn't involved, and I turned to my mother and sister for help because I didn't have the mental or emotional capacity to call vendors and venues and whatever else and cancel everything. My sister is engaged, and helped me with a lot of wedding planning. Next thing I know, my mother and sister are asking me if I wouldn't mind my sister just taking my wedding, every part of it, from the venue to the cake, and everything in between. The sole difference will be the wedding dress, and even then she said if she can't buy off the rack she might have to get mine tailored to fit her instead. I called off my engagement less than 3 weeks ago. I am a freaking mess. I reached out to my family to help me cancel the wedding, and my sister is planning to take it over instead. My sister has rung round our family explaining that she's taking over before she told me this. They are all attending. Her fiancé has contacted his family and given them the date he will be getting married. I found all this out today. She asked me if I was okay with this, like she hadn't already arranged everything. I told her to go F herself. I have until the 23rd to cancel things and get the money back. There's a couple of things where I won't get money back at this stage, but over 2/3 of it is still refundable. The money will be refunded to the card it was paid by, so both me and my parents will get the correct amounts back. Everything is shut right now, But it's the 21st tomorrow. As I've not been in contact with these companies and it's my name on all the contracts, I have full power over this wedding. My sister said she'd pay me back eventually, but knowing her I'll never see that money again. Wibta if I rung round everything and cancelled? Update. I talked to my sister and explained how upset I was and how hurt this made me feel, and she said that this was a good thing, and it would be therapeutic for me to see good come from bad. I said that is really not what it's feeling like on my end, and to me it feels like I got cheated on a month before my wedding, and my sister said she would cancel everything for me and then decided to get married in my dress in the venue my ex and I picked out together on my anniversary date, and this did not feel good. I said if she wanted to buy the wedding off me then I needed payment in full for my 60% by the 23rd. And I wanted to switch out our names on the contracts. She said she was hoping for closer to a payment plan, where she paid me back 50% of the 60% I put down in monthly installments over the next 10 months. She wanted to pay me back 5% per month for 10 months. And I still wouldn't get all my money back. I've made calls and cancelled everything. Everything was paid for by me and my parents' money paid primarily for upgrades to the things I'd already bought. The money will be refunded to whoever paid for it, so myself and my parents will all get the correct money back. However, with some, like the caterer, we've lost the deposit entirely. With some, like the venue, they kept part of the money, average 50%, but some kept more and some kept less, and with some, like the baker who was a family friend and hadn't started on the cake yet, they completely refunded it. I think the fact that I was open that the wedding was off because he cheated made them feel bad for me and probably made a few of them more lenient on refunds, didn't just bring it up for the sake of it. Most of them asked if I'd wanted to reschedule. On the whole, I've gotten a little over half back, which is not as much as I thought. Really annoying thing is that I put these cancellations through on the 21st, and if I'd done it on the 18th, 2 full weeks notice, I'd have gotten more. But they waited until the 20th to tell me. The dates are now open. The plans are now there. If she wants to rebook everything in her name she is welcome to. She helped me with a F-ton of planning, knows the details better than I do, and she can easily rebook the exact same thing and will probably be doing the vendors a favor considering how close we are to the big day. Some refunds will be instant, some will take a bit of time, longest is 2 weeks, and I'm no longer going on my honeymoon, so once all the refunds have come through, I might book a week away somewhere. Not sure what's happening with my sister/mother/family at large. In total, I would have gotten more back from my sister than I would from the venues, but it would be a year wait on her repaying me versus a few weeks on the venues. Currently drafting a Facebook post to tell the family what happened without me looking like a total bitch. I have a feeling they've already guessed what went on, but only one way to make sure. How do I set boundaries with my spouse? She is jealous and refuses to change. Been married for a few months and there have been rocky moments where my wife's attitude would turn on a dime. She was dealing with depression, anxiety, and probably has a fear of abandonment from her past relationships too. Her jealousy has led to her accusing me of looking for any sexual relationship outside of marriage and forcing me to change the default Google Assistant to a male voice. The past few days ago she saw a friend's suggestion on Facebook and flipped out saying I was searching for her because she was a past ex or romantic interest. The Facebook suggestion turned out to be an old group partner for a 4-person project from undergrad. This is not the first time that she accused me of seeing or lusting after someone else. She also accused me of going after someone at work, one of my trainers. It has come to the point that I avoid bringing up certain topics to avoid her going into an angry fit. I know with the standard advice that if she is being so accusatory that she could be projecting her guilt of cheating on me, and I think she might have a bipolar disorder with a lot of the symptoms. I know that a friend that she still talks to almost proposed to her too. After a fight a few nights age, she said it didn't matter what I thought if she sent him a picture of her bare chest. She is also on antidepressants, and when it comes close for her next dose she gets more jealous and irrational. From a cursory search, this jealousy is very unhealthy, and their fear of not wanting to be abandoned makes them double down on the accusations or suspicions. For the past few months she has been throwing out the threat of leaving me or divorce so often that when she says it now it doesn't hurt at all. When I told her one time to leave she doubled down on me coming home to make up. I don't have much experience in relationships where there is a difficult mental health issue such as bipolar. I've unsuccessfully tried to set boundaries before, but she scoffs at them. I feel sorry for the things she had to go through and only want the best. But it feels like in this marriage I have given 90% in making things happen and she has been coasting in the background, smoking, drinking, and not focusing on helping out financially. I'm not allowed to go out for friends, my time away is constantly questioned and my opinions and interests are disregarded when she just wants me nearby. I don't know what I can salvage, but I'm looking for advice on how to give reasonable expectations to a person when they are being unreasonable. TLDR, How can I set healthy boundaries with a spouse with a mental health condition? Update. Brief recap. Wife was extremely jealous one night and said I had wandering eyes when I can barely see without my glasses that she broke. Ended up sending me to the ER and she was arrested. She is concerned about what I need to do to correct her predicament when she was the one that threw the blows. Today was one of the pre-trial court hearings. She was upset all night last night, saying it was my fault that she was in this situation of a felony for assaulting me and that her stress was all of my fault. She scoffed at the deal that the state was offering, saying it was a death sentence for her career and our marriage. It was my understanding that a no-contact order would be in place while classes are being completed, but would be lifted after. She was under the impression that it would last through her probation. The night prior she was upset that I was doing research on marriage counseling, saying I was thinking we were too far gone even when we talked about finding a counselor a few days before. Late nights and early morning, she gets more paranoid as her antidepressant medication wears off, and I try to bear her verbal assaults trying to calm her down. Having a feeling a split was imminent, I packed my clothes and belongings from the place she was staying at during her no-contact order period while she was finishing up at court. When she got out, we had another argument about what she said I needed to do to fix her situation, saying I need to spend more money on 2 apartments so she isn't stuck with her friend. Again, to put her jealousy into perspective, she was so uncomfortable with me having the default female Google Assistant that she demanded I change it to a male voice. Also, she says I have wandering eyes, accusing me of checking out any woman that is anywhere and constantly questioning me if I am cheating on her. She has no respect for the privacy of my phone and searches through it, deleting so past evidence of her jealousy, breaking my glasses, and refuses me to search through her own phone, trying to point out the one-sidedness of her actions. When I called her out on her jealousy of the default Google voice, she demanded that I leave, that I had no respect for her friend's house and that I had no place to argue there. After, I decided to put out feelers for a divorce attorney and have started organizing my notes and evidence of her financial, physical, and emotional abuse over the course of our marriage. I have a therapist I have been seeing about some of this going on and have another appointment tomorrow. It's depressing that someone that I love would say and do things to hurt me, just because of a paranoia or unhealthy jealousy. I've tried getting her the mental health help that she needs, but she refuses to take the steps and initiative after getting her the information. My mom recommended me going no contact after my talking with her today, and after she mentioned that my wife called her the other day, ranting about me and my faults as a husband. I have no friends locally, and I feel like with the internet that the anonymity and the disconnect with personal relationship provides a cathartic relief for my situation. TLDR, called abusive wife out on unhealthy jealousy and she told me to leave and I left. My friend's husband said something making me really uneasy. Should I tell her? My friend and her husband are married for 1.5 years and have a 3-year-old beautiful daughter together. Last weekend they were at my and my fiance's apartment, and we were drinking and talking. My fiance and my friend were out to smoke, neither of me or her husband smoke, and I was left alone with her husband in the room. He was a little bit drunk. I got up to put some dishes away, and he just out of the blue said, "Your chest looks fantastic. I had implants 6 months ago." I laughed it off and said thanks, but then he said something that really put me off. He told me he would really like if I could get my friend to work out and put some effort in her appearance. I was really taken back by this and said I thought she was really gorgeous and he is lucky. And he just laughed it off. That was the end of it and I pretended that nothing happened till the rest of the night. After they left I told my fiance and he shared that sometimes when they hang out he makes similar comments. Should I tell her? I want to snap his head off really. Also, for the speculation about my friend, I want to make it clear that she is not overweight. She isn't even chubby. She may be not as toned as before the kid, but she has a beautiful body. TLDR, friend's husband made a comment about my boobs and then said he thinks my friend should work on her appearance. Wondering if I should tell her. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.